Chapter 281. The Battle Begins. The first to join the battle were the stragglers. Many Aurors, not in uniform, began their assault on the thugs. However, their numbers were too few and their attacks too weak to make a significant impact. On the outskirts of the battlefield, Cirilla led her team, methodically hunting down thugs attempting to flee. Sixth! Cirilla sneered as she appeared beside a burly thug in an instant, slashing his chest with her sharp sword. The impact was like a battering ram. The thug was sent flying, crashing into a large rock before sliding to the ground, motionless. Then, enveloped in a silver mist, she vanished just as a blood-red cruciatus curse struck the spot she had occupied, missing her entirely. The black-robed witch who had attacked her panicked, frantically searching for any sign of Cirilla. As expected, Cirilla reappeared behind her. The silver mist flickered, and the witch looked down in horror to see the tip of an arcane sword protruding from her abdomen, dripping with blood. Cirilla, merging with the shadows like an assassin in the night, had struck from behind. The power of ice surged through the wound, instantly freezing and necrotizing the witch's internal organs. Another soul. Ethan, observing from a distance, took out a crystal ball as black as ink and murmured. To the untrained eye, the crystal ball seemed ordinary, but those with keen senses could hear the endless wails and screams emanating from it. It was a special soul stone containing the souls of all the dark wizards who had perished that day. Ethan had secretly marked them beforehand, not only to guide Tonks, but also to collect their souls. As long as a marked wizard died, their soul would automatically be drawn into Ethan's crystal ball. By now, it contained 7 souls. Despite the Aurors not having made any lethal moves until then, casualties were inevitable in the chaos. And now, the Aurors were ready to intensify their efforts. "Everyone, attack," Tonks commanded, his patience with the enemy's defiance wearing thin. After the steel golems fortified themselves, the Aurors, arranged in a military formation, unleashed a barrage of powerful spells through the gaps between the golems. Given the situation wasn't an outright war, they primarily used potent single-target spells like the Crushing Curse, Intestinal Curse, Lightning Bolt, Scorching Ray, and Acid Arrow, always leaving room for the enemy to surrender. Tonks also ensured control spells were in place. Beside him, 6 wizards from the Erudite Society, working in pairs, cast spells through Professor Ethan's Circle Magic Circle. One pair maintained a dimensional anchor to prevent anyone from escaping via spatial spells, while the other cast a large-scale spiderweb spell, ensnaring the thugs in sticky webs that severely hindered their movement and combat effectiveness. Facing the organized might of the Aurors, the large number of thugs, mere stragglers, found their attacks futile against the steel golems. The Aurors' coordinated assault, combining offensive spells with control tactics under unified command, showcased their efficiency. As the Supreme Commander, Tonks himself refrained from entering the fray, overseeing the operation with a strategic eye. Tonks personally observed the thugs, utilizing several arcane eyes in the sky akin to drone cameras, providing her with a comprehensive view. It was as if she were playing a real-time strategy game, directing the Aurors to target the thugs' vulnerabilities, focusing on any leaders attempting to command them, as well as the dark wizards with significant personal strength. This strategy gradually weakened the thugs' resistance. Despite their efforts, the thugs found it increasingly difficult to fend off the coordinated attacks. Despair set in as screams, shouts, and the sounds of explosions filled the night. Bright lights flashed in all directions, revealing the faces of some thugs as their hoods fell during the battle. They were too desperate to bother covering up, waving their wands in a futile attempt to defer themselves. A tall and thin thug, surrounded and bleeding profusely from his facial features, held his chest in agony. 2 wizards lay defeated at his feet, one struck by a crushing curse and the other by an acid arrow. Nearby, a witch had fallen, her body pierced by numerous small nails, bleeding as if she were turning into a sea urchin. Then a heart-wrenching scream pierced the air, a sound of pain that no fire or spell could inflict. "They have lifted the ban," the thug managed to say, his voice strained with effort. The circle of young Aurors tightened, instilling a fear in the thug greater than any he had felt before. It wasn't just him. All the wizards trapped felt a bone-chilling despair, pushing them to resist with all their might. The air was filled with the chaos of spells, but the young aurors, protected by golems and fighting in formation, seemed unstoppable compared to their more experienced counterparts who fought alone. In the midst of this chaos, Ethan realized the danger to the injured aurors on the ground. Transforming into his animagus form, a chimera, he used his magic resistance to repeatedly enter the battlefield and rescue seriously injured aurors, bringing them to safety. Tonks, noticing Ethan's efforts, dispatched several formation-breaking golems to assist in transporting the wounded. These golems, lacking shields but equipped with basic magic resistance, were more suited for this task than ordinary wizards. Scrimgeour, observing the situation, noticed that the casualties were mostly among the veteran aurors, while the new recruits remained largely unharmed. He ordered a strategic retreat for the veterans, leaving the front line to Tonk's team and the new recruits to serve as an auxiliary force. Fudge, witnessing the unfolding events, nodded in agreement, a quick smile flashing in Jaina's eyes. It was clear that the dynamics between the old and new aurors were shifting. The sound of neat leather shoes stepping forward resonated, each step seeming to press on the hearts of the surrounded thugs. The circle of aurors closed in, their steel golem shield array pushing the thugs together, leaving them with increasingly less space to maneuver. Wall of fire. Following this command, under Tonk's command, a team of aurors quickly formed a circle and cast the firewall spell. The fierce flame surged, creating a towering barrier tens of meters in length, effectively blocking the thugs' escape route. Another set of firewall spells now. Tonk's order was promptly followed by 3 more aurors who positioned themselves into a circular formation. A second wall of fire ascended, trapping the thugs between the advancing steel golems and the relentless barrage from the aurors on one side, and a blazing inferno on the other, threatening to reduce them to ashes upon contact. Some of the thugs attempted to counter with flame-dispelling curse and flame-freezing curse, but these spells proved futile against the continuously sustained magical firewall. As Tonks gestured commandingly, the sound of orderly footsteps echoed ominously, heralding impending doom. All ready. Tonks raised her hand, signaling the next phase of the attack, but was interrupted by cries for mercy. "Stop fighting! We surrender!" The desperate pleas came from the thugs, overwhelmed by the dire situation. However, Tonks responded coldly, "It's too late for surrender. Anyone wishing to surrender must discard their wands, squat on the ground with their hands on their heads, and pray for Merlin's mercy. Ma'am, why not accept their surrender?" A seasoned auror who had been supporting the battle stepped forward to question Tonks's decision. "I am the commander here, and it's not my place to gamble with the lives of my team. Obey my orders." Tonks replied sharply, her gaze stern and unwavering. "Fire!" At her command, the magical aura flared once more, and the number of thugs standing swiftly dwindled. The battle was decisively won. Chapter 282. When Ethan and the others returned to the tent, it was already broad daylight. After receiving the notice that everything was over, Hermione, Jiangchu, and Luna made their way back as well. Upon seeing Ethan, Jiangchu was the first to rush forward, exclaiming, "Oh, thank God! Thank God!" She embraced Ethan tightly, and he responded by patting her back in a comforting manner. His expression was a mix of happiness and helplessness. He could feel the gaze of everyone in the room on him, with at least half displaying concern or disapproval. "Ahem, everyone is watching." Ethan coughed a few times, feeling uncomfortable, and gently tried to push Jiangchu away, not wanting to stir up any drama under the current circumstances. Realizing her faux pas, Jiangchu quickly let go of Ethan and proceeded to hug the others with the same fervor. Jaina, Tonks, and especially Cyrilla, who had previously looked at them with fierce eyes, were now embraced warmly, causing the female witcher to blush and her dissatisfaction to melt into helplessness. After diffusing a potential crisis, they moved to the dining area. The 3 girls had prepared a lavish spread of food while waiting, placing plates upon plates on the table. Ethan, after a moment of silence, embraced the 3 of them and whispered, "I'm sorry for making you worry." The eyes of the 3 girls immediately welled up with tears, filled with both concern and self-reproach. Hermione, unable to sleep in the tower due to her overwhelming worries, had suggested cooking as a way to contribute, given their inability to join the battle. Despite everyone's diminished appetite post-battle, they all sat down to honor their efforts with what turned into a hearty breakfast. "Why did you come back so late? I saw many people leaving the camp before dawn," Hermione inquired, setting aside her worries and driven by curiosity. Tonks, while enjoying a piece of buttered bread, explained, "The incident caused a huge uproar in the Ministry of Magic, which found itself short-staffed. Even those on vacation were urgently recalled. We had this time to rest because we fought all night. We have been planning for so long, and all plans should be able to achieve the expected goals," Jaina stated softly, capturing everyone's attention. "Congratulations, Tonks. If everything goes as planned, the Auror's authority will be significantly enhanced. The division of labor between combatants and civilian personnel will become clearer, and you will gain command of the most elite combat troops. You will also be responsible for the selection of equipment, training, and combat strategies for all Aurors," Jaina said, looking at her most capable assistant with trust and expectation. "What's going on, Jaina?" Tonks urged, eager to know more. "The performance of you and your subordinates tonight was impressive. Scrimger took the initiative to propose a cooperation, aligning with our plans. He has always wanted to lift the Auror's ban on lethal magic, which fits our agenda. I seized the opportunity to negotiate an expansion of your authority. Although your position won't change, your power will," Jaina explained, setting down her utensils to elaborate. "However, Scrimger was hesitant, thinking my conditions were too steep and not in his interest. So I suggested a compromise that would expand the Auror's scope of work, benefiting both his power and our needs, leading him to agree." "What about Minister Fudge? He won't just sit back and watch you expand your power, right?" Penello asked, sensing something amiss. As if on cue, several owls flew in through the tent window, each carrying thick newspapers. Fudge was initially hesitant about lifting the ban on lethal magic for Aurors, but his stance is likely to change after seeing today's newspaper, Onyxia announced with pride. She and Jaina had anticipated Fudge's reaction and planned accordingly. In response to Fudge's weak character, they decided to leverage public pressure, a task she was in charge of. As a result, everyone paused their breakfast to peruse the morning's newspapers. Jaina selected a piece of news and quickly skimmed the front page, while Tonks peeked over her shoulder with curiosity. Ethan, meanwhile, leisurely browsed through other newspapers, occasionally frowning and taking sips of the sugarless milk tea Hermione had prepared, which he found slightly displeasing. Headlines such as, "The Yin Kingdom team wins the championship, with Ethan Green hailed as the best chaser. The World Cup concludes gloriously, crowning the Kingdom of Yin. The arena was ablaze with passion as Ethan and Cyrilla shared a passionate kiss, winning the Best Partner award. And shock! In this World Cup, the Golden Snitch was magically captured by a chaser," caught his attention. Ethan's interest was particularly piqued by a shocking headline, prompting him to skillfully avoid spilling his milk tea on the newspaper. The famous seeker Victor Crumb's relationship revealed. His lover is actually a man. Zhang Chu, always keen on gossip, approached with interest. Upon seeing the accompanying photo, she burst into laughter, nearly collapsing onto Ethan, who wondered if her reaction was intentional. The photo depicted Crumb knocking Ron down, their lips touching, and Ron's eyes wide open, appearing as if Crumb was forcibly kissing him. "Isn't this from the box scene? Which newspaper managed to capture this?" Zhang Chu exclaimed, urging Ethan to keep flipping through. "It's the Quibbler, a World Cup special issue. Luna must be behind this," Ethan realized, catching Luna's playful smile and the small camera she waved in his direction. "Indeed, it was her," Ethan acknowledged, continuing to read and laughing again at an article titled, "The Bulgarian Minister was beaten to his knees by none other than Minister Fudge." The photo showed the Bulgarian minister in disbelief, with Fudge barely holding back a laugh. Zhang Chu, having just taken a sip of milk tea, couldn't contain her amusement. "This title, this content, it's absurd. Who wrote this? Ah, Rita Skeeter," she discovered, turning to the article's end. Luna chimed in, "I got a lot of royalties." Seeing Zhang Chu's fascination with male scandals, Ethan handed the Quibbler to her and continued browsing other newspapers. "Tonks, you're mentioned here," Ethan suddenly announced, holding up the Daily Prophet with a spark of excitement in his eyes. "Where? Read it to me quickly," Tonks asked eagerly. Ethan began. Compared to the older generation of Aurors, the new generation has shown excellent training levels and teamwork. They are methodical in maintaining order and can quickly subdue troublemakers. Notably, the ban on lethal magic for Aurors has been lifted. Whether this marks a new normal remains to be seen. "Where's my name?" Tonks inquired anxiously, scanning the newspaper. "Please don't rush," Ethan reassured her, patting her hand as he continued. "The training methods received by the older generation of Aurors are outdated and—" Ethan smiled and looked at Tonks. "Listen, this is your news." He pointed to a photo in the newspaper, which displayed an elite Auror with pink hair leading a group of uniformed trainees. The caption praised the Auror for assisting the public in a gentle and polite manner, a stark contrast to her cold demeanor in battle. "Look, this is you." After sharing the news, Ethan handed the newspaper to Tonks, then stood up and stretched, a hint of fatigue evident on his face. He felt the need to freshen up, as Lucius Malfoy was expected to arrive soon for a visit, a meeting they had agreed upon the previous day. He couldn't afford to neglect proper etiquette. Chapter 283. When Ethan emerged from the bathroom feeling refreshed, he was surprised to find Hermione Granger waiting quietly outside his door. "Hermione, what are you doing here?" Ethan asked, his gaze landing on the two small bottles clutched in Hermione's hands, his expression one of confusion. "I came across a massage tutorial by Zhang Chu titled Modern Genki Massage in a Generalized Way. I ordered a copy for myself and have been practicing on a pillow for quite some time. I thought I might help you relieve some fatigue," Hermione explained, her tone serious yet tinged with uncertainty. A wave of warmth washed over Ethan. He stiffly stepped aside, allowing Hermione to enter. "Take off your clothes and lie down," Hermione instructed, her chin lifted slightly as she gestured for Ethan to expose his back. "Lie down," Ethan echoed, momentarily taken aback. Memories of Zhang Chu flashed through his mind, causing him to blush. "Well, I didn't expect you to be so grown up," he mumbled. "Stop dawdling and hurry up," Hermione urged, placing the bottle on the bed and folding her hands behind her back. Ethan complied, lying down neatly on the quilt, his ears burning red. As Ethan lay there, he felt a cool, slippery substance glide down his spine, eliciting a soft hum from him that gradually grew louder until he couldn't help but scream out. Their moment, however, was abruptly interrupted by a knock on the door. "Ethan, Lucius Malfoy is here to see you," Luna's voice floated in from outside. Ethan's frown eased as he quickly got up and opened the door. Hermione, looking rather pleased with herself, boasted, "I must say, my massage skills are quite effective. Just look at how much better Ethan feels." Luna, eyeing the bottles with curiosity, said, "Hermione, could you give me a massage too? I was quite tired from watching you cook yesterday." Hermione, eager to continue, promptly had Luna lie down on the bed. After a while, she asked with a smug smile, "How do you feel? Comfortable?" "You should try your massage skills on Onyxia," Luna suggested, her expression strained as sweat trickled down her face. "Of course, after she returns to her original form." Hermione, not catching the last part, increased her pressure, declaring, "Then say goodbye to your sore muscles." Luna managed a nod, though her response was a pained, "Goodbye, muscles." Seizing the opportunity, Ethan slipped out of the room, attempting various stretches to alleviate some of the discomfort. By the time he reached the hall, he had regained his usual composure, as if the recent events were of no consequence. Yet, the lingering sensation of the massage cream and the anticipation it stirred within him were unforgettable. "Mr. Malfoy, welcome," Ethan greeted, his tone polite yet distant. Lucius Malfoy, maintaining his poise, nodded in acknowledgement, skillfully masking his discomfort from the previous night. He took a deep breath, concealing his inner turmoil as he strove to appear calm. Ethan offered a slight smile and led Lucius into the study room of the tent. Upon entering, Jaina stood to greet him. "Welcome, Lucius, and thank you for your assistance to the Ministry of Magic," she said, her bow slight and her tone respectful, though her eyes betrayed her true feelings. "It's my duty," Lucius replied, his voice carrying a hint of resignation. "But my efforts are not solely for the Ministry, but for Mr. Green, and of course, for you, madam." Jaina's smile softened. Assisting Ethan is akin to assisting me. It's all the same, she remarked casually, her demeanor relaxed yet authoritative. Words full of intimacy were exchanged with Ethan. Ethan told me everything about last night. Without you, we wouldn't have been able to engage in such a decisive battle. Upon hearing this, Lucius Malfoy immediately asked with a mix of hope and anxiety, "So, my vote passed your request, right, Miss Proudmoore?" His voice carried a blend of expectation and uneasiness. "Yes, Lucius, that's correct," Jaina nodded, gesturing for Lucius to take a seat. "You are now qualified to collaborate with us." "What do you seek from us?" Jaina inquired. Her beautiful brown eyes, clear as lake water yet seemingly bottomless, seemed to peer into one's very soul. Lucius felt a jolt as if struck by lightning when her gaze met his. In her eyes, he sensed an endless wisdom and a formidable power unlike any he had encountered before. His usual diplomatic rhetoric and pretense faltered under her gaze. He turned pale, finding himself at a loss for words. It dawned on him that Ethan wasn't the only formidable one among them. Jaina's strength far exceeded his expectations. Her reputation for capturing dark wizards and rising to prominence was well-deserved. After a moment of hesitation, Lucius finally voiced his true concerns. "I need assurance of safety," he said, his voice weak and trembling, a stark contrast to his usual composure. "Due to my negligence, you-know-who lost one of his Horcruxes, and it has been a source of constant trouble. I'm concerned for my family's safety." Lucius's voice broke, and he began to tremble, tears welling up in his eyes. "Yesterday, I betrayed them again by aiding you in diminishing his power. If he discovers my betrayal, the Malfoy family will be doomed," he said, his voice filled with fear. Lucius no longer cared about maintaining the dignity of a pure-blood family. Tears streamed down his face as he spoke of his family. "I can bear whatever comes my way, but Narcissa and Draco are innocent. They shouldn't have to suffer because of my actions." After his confession, Lucius lowered his head, tears falling onto his hands. "I apologize for losing my composure," he said, his body still shaking. In Jaina's presence, Lucius felt powerless and insignificant for the first time. With a casual gesture, Jaina summoned a magical hand that poured Lucius a glass of red currant rum. Taking the glass, Lucius's expression subtly changed before he downed it in one gulp. After a deep sigh, he looked up at Jaina with a mix of pleading and resolve. "Miss Proudmoore, I know my cooperation yesterday doesn't erase my past mistakes, but please, for the sake of my family's safety, help us," he implored, his voice strengthened by the wine. "I'll do anything you ask, offer anything you desire from the Malfoy estate. All I ask is for you to protect my family, especially at critical moments. I know you have the power to do so." Jaina observed Lucius, noting the fear but also the determination in his eyes. Acknowledging his plea, she nodded and gestured for him to calm down and sit back. Lucius took a deep breath and complied. Jaina then outlined her conditions. "Lucius, given your former position as a school director at Hogwarts and your connections with other pureblood families, you have a unique role to play." She was well aware of the Malfoy family's long-standing influence and how Lucius had lost his position. Lucius nodded. Although he was no longer the school director, his connections remained strong. He regarded Jaina with a hint of skepticism, trying to decipher her true intentions. "I don't need your wealth," he stated. Jaina shook her head slowly, standing up to face Lucius with a piercing gaze. "What I need from you are your connections within the dark wizarding world and among those pure-blood families. I want you to serve as an intermediary to help us gain their support, ensuring our policies are implemented smoothly." Lucius hesitated, realizing the complexity of Jaina's request. He had initially thought she would ask for monetary or property contributions, but she was asking for something far more valuable: his connections and influence. Observing Lucius's hesitation, Jaina returned to her seat, her voice laced with unwavering determination. "Is there any difficulty?" Lucius glanced at Jaina's composed expression and then at Ethan, who simply waved his hand, signaling his agreement with Jaina's terms. It dawned on Lucius that he had no choice but to comply. Taking a deep breath, he shook his head firmly. "No difficulty. Miss Proudmoore, I will do my utmost to serve you." "Very well, then. To demonstrate your sincerity, I would like you to secure some shares of Hogwarts for Miss Presto. It's a simple task. Just ensure Katrana becomes one of the governors of Hogwarts, Jaina stated calmly, as though discussing a trivial matter. I understand, Lady Proudmoore. I will do everything in my power to fulfill this task. The Malfoy family is at your service, Lucius responded. After bowing deeply to Jaina, he turned and left, his posture resolute, signaling a firm commitment to his new allegiance. Chapter 284. After sending Lucius off, Ethan returned to the tent and saw Tonks emerging from Hermione's room, rubbing her shoulders. Her peculiar demeanor piqued everyone's curiosity. Hi, Tonks. What happened to you? Zhang Chu inquired, puzzled. Just now, Cyrilla and I tried out Miss Granger's massage, Tonks replied, her voice quivering slightly. Her skills, they're even worse than yours. Ethan noticed Cyrilla hiding her face behind a newspaper, embarrassed and muttering, I didn't mean to. It was Penelo who suggested Hermione's massage to me. Tonks and Zhang Chu turned their gaze towards Penelo, who, having been snickering moments ago, now covered her mouth and hesitated. Luna recommended it to me first. I thought her skills were really good. Because I saw Ethan enjoying it, Luna's voice chimed in, though Ethan could detect a subtle tremble in it. It was my boyfriend who kept it from me first. Don't call him boyfriend, Cyrilla interjected angrily. That's not your boyfriend. That's my boyfriend. After the kiss on the court, Cyrilla's assertiveness had grown. However, the others, accustomed to Luna's candidness, were not shocked by her bold declaration. Zhang Chu even winked at Ethan ambiguously. Feeling uncomfortable, Ethan touched his nose. Tonks, oblivious to the girls' silent rivalry, continued, It felt like torture. I wanted to stop, but didn't know how. What should I do? This comment made Zhang Chu burst into laughter. At that moment, Jaina emerged from the study and announced, Tonks, Cyrilla, Penelope, it's time for us to head to the Ministry of Magic. Despite not having slept all night, she appeared energetic. Many have been arrested and need to be tried individually. We might have to work overtime at the ministry these days. Don't worry about preparing food for us. By the way, Ethan, you might soon receive 2 more accolades. The Order of Merlin. Jaina looked at Ethan and smiled softly. You're being considered for the Merlin Level 2 medal because you transported the wounded during the battle, allowing them to receive timely treatment. Fudge is advocating for you, largely due to the Bulgarian minister's influence. He believes you deserve the credit. Jaina's smile seemed to seek acknowledgement from Ethan. It appeared this medal was a pleasant surprise she had arranged for him. Although the recognition was unexpected, Ethan was genuinely pleased. Sister Jaina is so kind to me, he said, moving forward to hug her. The Princess of Kultiris looked satisfied, reminiscent of a long-time smoker rediscovering their habit. Their intimate moment was interrupted by a knock on the door. Ethan opened it and was taken aback by the sight before him. A stunningly beautiful girl stood outside, her long silver hair cascading down to her waist, her large, bright blue eyes and slightly pointed ears betraying her mixed heritage. She spoke English with a French accent, her voice slightly hoarse yet seductively magnetic. Excuse me, do Cyrilla Leanne and Ethan Green live here? She asked. Before Ethan could respond, she recognized him. Wait, you are Ethan Green. With surprising enthusiasm, she rushed forward and kissed him on each cheek. Ethan, caught off guard by her forwardness, didn't have time to react. Who have you found? Tonks's voice came from behind Ethan, her curiosity evident as she joined them at the door. To check the situation at the door, Tonks caught sight of Ethan and a strikingly beautiful girl in an embrace, sharing a kiss. Yo, that's okay, brother Ethan. Where did you find such a beautiful girl? Tonks teased, though Ethan could detect a hint of jealousy in her tone. I don't know either, Ethan admitted, finally stepping back from the girl and wiping the lingering scent from his face, equally puzzled by the encounter. At that moment, a young man in an Auror uniform stepped forward. Sir Tonks, this is the case. The girl is Fleur Delacour, and she specifically came to thank Mr. Green and Miss Leanne for their assistance, he explained earnestly. Despite his serious tone, Ethan could sense the young Auror's deep envy and resentment. Fleur Delacour was the witch who represented Beauxbaton's academy in the Triwizard Tournament, as Ethan recalled. Not of pure-blood descent, Fleur possessed a quarter Vila blood, inheriting the enchanting qualities of her grandmother. Vilas, humanoid magical creatures with platinum hair and moonlit skin, hailed from Bulgaria. Their beauty and dance could mesmerize nearly any man, leading to impulsive acts for their affection. The Vilas once caused chaos as mascots for the Bulgarian Quidditch team, similar to the nymphs of D&D, known for their allure and connection to nature. Fleur's Vila heritage granted her a formidable charm, a trait Ethan, who had honed his ability to charm humans, found intriguing. Perhaps it was the rarity of meeting someone who could resist her allure so swiftly, or sensing a kindred spirit in Ethan, that piqued Fleur's interest in him. Despite being pushed away, she clung to Ethan's arm, expressing her gratitude for the rescue of her grandfather with enthusiasm. Ethan realized Fleur's visit was to extend her thanks. Alongside Cyrilla, they had rescued Fleur's grandfather, an elderly wizard, under Kingsley's coordination. Entering the tent with Fleur, Ethan noticed the immediate tension from the girls, sensing Fleur as a threat. However, Fleur, accustomed to the turmoil her presence often caused, quickly diffused the situation. Upon seeing Cyrilla, Fleur released Ethan, greeting Cyrilla with 2 kisses on the cheek, leaving her momentarily stunned and prompting laughter from Ethan. Except for the envious young Auror, Fleur's charm won over everyone present, her French warmth disarming any potential resentment. After expressing her gratitude, Fleur departed with the young Auror, subtly passing Ethan a note with her contact information. Following Fleur's departure, Jaina, along with Tonks, Cyrilla, and Penello, hurried out to work overtime at the Ministry of Magic. Even Onyxia, associated with the Department for the Management and Control of Magical Creatures, was called upon, leaving the tent abuzz with the aftermath of Fleur's visit. To assist, the few remaining individuals packed up their tents and made their way back to the tower. The image displayed was a concept drawing of Fleur Delacour, which she had created on her own. Chapter 285. In the days that followed, Jaina and the others were stationed at the Ministry of Magic, their schedules packed to the brim. Ethan, on the other hand, was equally engrossed in his endeavors. He secluded himself in his workshop, laboring through the night. Amidst the chaos, his unique soul stone captured the souls of 10 dark wizards, paving the way for him to embark on his ambitious artificial maid project. Unlike the mass-produced steel golems, Ethan aimed to craft a personal maid. His standards for a maid were high, both in his past and present life. He sought not just excellence in housekeeping, but also the ability to tackle problems and manage crises for their master. They were to be the master's sword and shield, adept at navigating both the subtleties of private conversations and the elegance required in social gatherings. Moreover, they were expected to be fierce protectors, ready to eliminate any obstacle for their master without hesitation. In essence, while named maid, they were envisioned as a holy grail, a universal wishing machine, unwaveringly loyal to their master under any circumstances. Creating such an artificial maid required more sophistication than the rudimentary golems. To rival or even surpass house elves, Ethan's creation needed top-tier spellcasting abilities capable of overpowering ordinary Death Eaters. This necessitated a core crafted from a wizard's soul, but a single soul was insufficient. Ethan merged 5 souls at once, along with numerous ordinary Muggle souls, extracting their essence. This process was crucial to ensure the spiritual core not only exceeded the spellcasting abilities of average wizards, but also possessed the potential for growth, akin to humans. This feat would have been unattainable had Ethan not acquired the soul spell specialization during his time in Rwanda. With his current reserves, he could create 2 spiritual cores of this caliber, allowing for the creation of at least 2 artificial maids with the capabilities of an 11th level caster, meaning they could wield 6th level spells. However, Ethan envisioned them as more than mere mages. Their physical forms were to be formidable weapons in their own right. Moreover, should he acquire more wizard souls in the future, he could further enhance the spiritual cores, highlighting the versatility of artificial maids. After crafting 2 potent blank souls, Ethan employed the Demon Soul Pot spell to forge a spiritual core from the Soul Stone. The Demon Soul Pot, a 5th-level necromancy spell, was initially devised by nefarious wizards as a rudimentary alternative to lichdom, aimed at extending one's lifespan. However, it was later discovered that it could also be used to create magical constructs. The advantage of using the Demon Soul Pot for the artificial maid's spiritual core was its modularity. As long as the core remained intact, it could be transferred to another construct, retaining the ability to learn, communicate, perceive, and preserve the complete memory and personality of the original form. Essentially, it served as both the brain and soul of the artificial maid, akin to a robot's core chip. This meant that no matter the extent of damage or obsolescence of the artificial maid's body, it could always be updated or replaced, ensuring longevity and adaptability. After creating the spiritual core, Ethan's next step was to craft the bodies. Since he planned to create 2 maids, he naturally needed 2 bodies. Ethan intended to use these bodies to test different technologies, representing his dual exploration paths in the realm of magical mechanical technology. Developing a magical civilization necessitates overcoming the threshold of magic machines. Despite magic's near omnipotence, it comes with costs, and not all tasks can be efficiently accomplished through magic alone. With the advancement of human technology, many problems can be solved by adhering strictly to the laws of physics. Magic, then, should be reserved for addressing key issues that are either impossible or difficult to solve the science and technology alone. This approach represents the most efficient direction for development. For instance, precision instruments often struggle in extreme environments. Thus, even though humans have managed to land on Mars, their rovers rely on magical spells for constant temperature and humidity control, which proves extremely convenient as long as no adverse reactions occur within the magical field. Ethan's foray into magical technology had until now been limited to modifying existing technological creations alongside Arthur Weasley. However, he planned to delve deeper in the future. The 2 artificial maids were not only intended to serve as his personal assistants, but also as test bodies for the latest technological advancements. Consequently, each maid would embody a different technical approach. For one of them, Ethan employed the traditional magic construct route. He used fairy silver for the skeleton of Maidna, marble for the muscles, and a combination of unicorn down braid and basilisk skin for the skin, with unicorn tail hair for the hair. This composition ensured durability for both daily use and intense combat situations. To achieve the desired tactile experience and flexibility, Ethan relied heavily on transformation spells, allowing the maid to adjust the softness and hardness of her skin as needed. To maximize the effectiveness of these transformations, Ethan sacrificed another Philosopher's Stone, installing it in the maid's cerebellum to serve as her motor center. Ethan meticulously designed every detail of Maid Number 1, from her facial appearance and body details to her graceful curves and even the fingerprints on her fingers. Despite the convenience of spells like stone shaping for crafting each part, Ethan revised his designs 3 times to ensure everything matched his vision of beauty and functionality. Assembling the parts was relatively straightforward, with any mismatches easily corrected through fine-tuning of the transformation spell. However, the most challenging part followed, enchanting Maid Number 1 with various magics to endow her with special abilities. Ethan applied constant false life for vitality, instruction technique for the ability to receive and obey commands, and memory for the capacity to memorize and learn spells. He also imbued her with extraordinary attributes through constant enchantments like bull power, bear's tenacity, cat's elegance, fox's cunning, owl's wisdom, and eagle's majesty, equivalent to the effects of consuming 6 permanent attribute potions. Additionally, stone skin technique provided her with enhanced defense, and acceleration further augmented her capabilities. Ethan endowed Maid Number 1 with the ability to move swiftly. The constant presence of an anti-magic force field grants her robust magic resistance. Unlike magic resistance, which is passive, the spell reversal ability allows Maid Number 1 to actively reflect spells. Ethan utilized 2 crystals to craft her eyeballs, imbuing them with advanced detection, greater arcane vision, and the true seeing technique. These enhancements grant her exceptional vision, enabling her to see through most forms of invisibility and illusions, identify magical items, and observe from great distances. The perpetual resurrection technique allows Maid Number 1 to automatically heal after sustaining damage. Although the resurrection technique is a divine skill beyond Ethan's mastery, he found a workaround using a rejuvenation elixir, created with the Philosopher's Stone, achieving a similar effect for enchantment purposes. Furthermore, Ethan performed energy implantation on her, bestowing Made No. 1 with an energy characteristic. Given that Ethan's adversaries are primarily dark wizards and creatures, he opted to infuse her with positive energy, symbolizing the forces of good. For this purpose, Ethan transformed into a feathered serpent and infused Maid No. 1 with a substantial amount of positive energy. This not only granted her the power to purify negative forces, but also provided her with a natural advantage against dark wizards and creatures. Ethan applied every technique at his disposal to implement the planned modifications on Maid No. 1, making her a formidable magic construct. He also designed a unique weapon and spellcasting medium for her. Utilizing the technology of the arcane sword, he created a versatile weapon that can enlarge into a battle implement and assist in spellcasting or transform into various tools for daily tasks. Given her role as a maid, Ethan designed the weapon's prototype as a pair of scissors. As for Maid No. 1's appearance, Ethan designed her as a girl with blue spiral twin tails, drawing inspiration from her past life. He named her Gwen, giving her a distinct identity. Please support this work with custom orders, flowers, monthly votes, comments, and rewards. Your votes are especially important to me as the author. They truly matter. Chapter 286, The Integration of Magic and Mechanics in Maid No. 2. The technology employed by Maid No. 1, Gwen, and Ethan is primarily based on magic. From their power sources to their functionalities, most aspects are driven by magic-infused construct technology. With Maid No. 2, Ethan aims to explore a path that leans more towards mechanical operations, or as it would be termed in another world, the clockwork route. If magic constructs are technologies that rely on magic and are supported by mechanical structures, then clockwork technology prioritizes the precision of mechanical engineering, with magic serving as a supplementary power source. Clockwork creations can be likened to golems, a type of technological structure assembled entirely from hundreds of gears, screws, springs, and other components. Some spellcasters might scoff at clockwork creations, dismissing them as mere crude imitations of golems animated by the magical prowess of arcanists. However, this clockwork technical model boasts its own unique advantages. Similar to golems and other animated objects, clockwork creations can execute multiple commands issued by their owner simultaneously. These commands are permanently etched into its memory core, propelling the machine to carry out the instructions. Only those in possession of the master key have the authority to program instructions into this clockwork creation. In contrast to the flexibility magic activation provides to magic constructs, clockwork creations exhibit a rigidity akin to robots. They will faithfully execute their master's commands until they are reprogrammed or destroyed. Unlike many golems that often malfunction for various reasons, clockwork creations merely require routine maintenance, oiling, cleaning, and part replacement to continue operating stably and almost indefinitely. Moreover, owing to their predominantly mechanical structure, clockwork creations are highly adaptable. The capabilities of a clockwork creation are limited only by the imagination of its creator, with their modular structures allowing transformation into nearly any form or image. In the Harry Potter universe, Ethan can fully utilize Muggle electronic and mechanical innovations, seamlessly integrating them with magic. Thus, the vision Ethan has for Maid No. 2 is that of a superior magic robot. The first challenge in constructing such a robot is addressing the issue of intelligence. With Muggle technology, even 30 years into the future, it will only have developed weak artificial intelligence based on big data and machine learning. This form of artificial intelligence, which essentially identifies patterns in vast datasets through exhaustive statistics, lacks the logic of true biological intelligence and will never evolve into genuine artificial intelligence. However, what is insurmountable for Muggles is trivial for wizards. The simplest consciousness generated by an activation spell can be considered true intelligence, albeit at a very basic level. Ethan's approach involves merging the spiritual core with Muggle integrated circuits, allowing the consciousness emanating from the spiritual core to control the computational power of the integrated circuits. The intelligence thus created can perfectly blend human consciousness with computer processing power, serving as the core of a super robot. Moreover, in Ethan's hands, the same integrated circuits can perform significantly better than in Muggle applications. The primary issue with integrated circuits is heat dissipation. High-speed integrated circuits can overheat quickly and typically require extensive cooling systems. This is why the core of Muggle computers, the small CPU, is encased in such large chassis. However, with Ethan's application of a temperature control spell, the CPU can operate smoothly for extended periods without external cooling, allowing for overclocking at will. Consequently, while other integrated chips necessitate numerous auxiliary facilities for operation, Ethan can stack them and use them collectively, enabling Maid No. 2 to integrate. Integrating computing power equivalent to a small supercomputer into a body comparable to a human being presents two main challenges. The first is energy technology. Without microreactors, it's impossible for humans to support super robots capable of flying into the sky and escaping Earth. Considering that 90% of a rocket's weight is fuel, the magnitude of this problem is clear. In this aspect, magic holds a significant advantage. To enable a Maid 2 robot, weighing several hundred kilograms, to fly and escape Earth's gravity, the energy consumed and the space required to store the equivalent magical energy are minimal. A fist-sized magic crystal suffices for long-term, high-intensity activity. Ethan only needs 10 minutes and half of his magical power to charge this crystal, which is fully restored by the next day. Furthermore, there's high-strength material technology capable of producing ultra-high-strength alloys that are both hard and flexible through reinforcement technology. Automatic repair technology is made possible through resurrection, while extreme environment adaptation technology is maintained through temperature control and desiccation technique. These key functions are sustained by magic, allowing the infrastructure of Maid 2 to be achieved with Muggle technology. As Ethan envisioned, Maid No. 2 is a super magic robot. Her intelligent core and energy issues are all resolved by magic, with the rest being a simple robot. From head to toe, she is powered by existing Muggle robotics technology. All her joints are electric motors, and all neural networks are electronic components, but they are powered by magic instead of electricity. Magic not only perfectly replaces electricity, but also addresses many issues associated with electric drive, such as the resistance problem, which significantly limits the functionality of various electronic components. Natural materials, like unicorn hair, dragon heartstrings, and fairy silver, offer much lower resistance to magical power than copper wire does to electric current. This is akin to having a near-room temperature superconducting material, greatly enhancing the performance of electronic components made from these materials. When it comes to motors, what limits the power of electric motors is the resistance and heating of the coils. With resistance nearly eliminated, the output limit of the magic motor far exceeds that of a standard motor. This principle also applies to creating ion thrusters. With Muggle technology, the most advanced plasma thrusters were barely effective. However, by achieving zero resistance, the voltage of the ion thruster significantly increases, allowing it to reach the power of a jet engine, similar to Iron Man's jet engine. Besides the basic functions, most of Maid 2's other features are also realized by Muggle technology, such as sensory detection functions, including night vision, infrared vision, and over-distance vision. If Ethan had followed the route of magical constructs, he would have had to enchant Maid 2's eyeballs with various detection magics, just as he did with Maid 1, Gwen. However, by utilizing Muggle technology like night vision, infrared detectors, telescopes, ultrasonic detectors, and radar, Ethan can comprehensively monitor the surrounding environment and enemies. The challenge of the single component size, which hampers mechanical design, is also addressed with magic solutions. Both the space extension spell and the reducing spell effectively solve this issue. Moreover, advanced arcane vision is another aspect requiring magic. After all, without the ability to sense magic, Muggles cannot detect it. Only magic can counteract magic, making it essential for collecting various data and insights. Ethan visited almost all relevant laboratories around the world in a week, acquiring high-end chips, components, and robot parts. Fortunately, thanks to the Forgetting Curse, the laboratories remained unexposed, avoiding news of large-scale theft. However, this came at a cost. The consequence of using the forgetting curse is that the user will become forgetful for a short period. It is estimated that in the next few years, a peculiar form of amnesia will spread among scientists globally, significantly slowing progress in fields such as electronic computers, robots, electric motors, and ion thrusters. But Ethan wasn't concerned about these repercussions. Thanks to Ethan's efforts, Maid Number 2, which fully adopts magical transformation robot technology, boasts abilities nearly equivalent to a living Iron Man. It can be guided through intelligent core control, powered by a magic crystal drive, and utilizes magic materials throughout its structure to cast various simple spells. The only thing more formidable than an Iron Man is a magical Iron Man. The primary challenge was the cost. Excluding the expense for Muggle mechanical and electronic components, the large magic crystal and the substantial amount of magic materials required a significant investment. However, creating Maid Number 2 was deemed worth the expense. As a product of the Clockwork technology line, one of Maid Number 2's major advantages is its scalability. Ethan can design and install any functional device on Maid Number 2 as desired. For instance, he imitated Iron Man by installing 2 ion thrusters in the palms and an overclocking function. When overclocked, the ion thrusters can emit high-energy ion beams, transforming into a plasma cannon. Ethan also created numerous magic-powered mini-clockwork insects to act as scouts for Maid Number 2. These insects, equivalent to microdrones, provide additional vision and are usually attached to Maid Number 2 for charging, released when needed. Furthermore, Ethan equipped Maid Number 2 with a machine gun as a conventional weapon, capable of automatic loading and continuous fire. Once the ammunition is depleted, Maid Number 2 can craft new ammunition from scrap metal, providing unlimited ammunition. Additionally, Ethan installed a laser generator in Maid Number 2's eyes, capable of generating images similar to illusion magic through laser holographic technology and emitting high-energy rays. Although rockets are an essential weapon, Maid Number 2 cannot produce them independently and must be manually replenished. To enhance daily usability, Ethan used a transformation spell to adjust the surface softness of some parts, ensuring Maid Number 2 wasn't uncomfortably cold to the touch. He also designed external weapons, including a mechanical sphere half a meter in diameter with integrated functions such as electromagnetic pulse generators and sound wave generators. These can disrupt the operation of nearby biological and electronic devices. The force field generator, akin to a constant force field wall spell, protects Maid Number 2, and overclocking the reverse power field generator produces a formidable force field shockwave, akin to a small Shenzhen effect. In the end, Ethan named Maid Number 2 Oriana, inspired by her previous life, and shared the Oriana concept map. Chapter 287. After tirelessly working day and night, Ethan finally completed the bodies of the 2 artificial maids. Now, it was time to breathe life into them. Ethan extended his hands towards them, initiating the final phase of their creation. As he activated the Demon Soul Pot spell, 2 brand new souls stirred within the spiritual core. Soon after, the doll-like Gwen awakened. She stretched, mimicking the actions of a real girl stirring from sleep, and then her gaze fell upon Ethan. A spark of recognition lit up in the little maid's eyes, and she immediately sensed a special bond with him, a connection that promised warmth and happiness upon submission. Eagerly, she hopped off the workbench and approached Ethan. "Hello, my name is Gwen. Are you my master?" "Yes, I am Ethan Green, your creator and master. It's a pleasure to meet you, Gwen." Ethan gently lifted the little maid, examining her as one might a delicate doll. He then proceeded to explain her identity and responsibilities. Gwen, brimming with enthusiasm, assured him, "Don't worry, master. Gwen will definitely become the best maid and take excellent care of this home." After absorbing Ethan's instructions, Gwen dedicated herself to learning about the world and her duties as a maid. Oriana's activation, however, proved to be more complex. As a clockwork creation, she required manual winding to charge her core, a process that significantly drained Ethan's magical power. Once activated, Oriana's eyes sparkled to life, her body illuminated with indicator lights, and even the nozzles on her palms and soles glowed. She then sat up, stepped down from the workbench, and with slightly mechanical movements, lifted her skirt slightly in a maid salute to Ethan. It is a pleasure to serve you, master. Greetings from your maid, Oriana. Unlike Gwen, who required time to learn, Oriana, with her electronic core, could have various information and functions pre-installed, saving time on training. Observing Oriana, who was taller, Gwen asked curiously, "Is this my sister, master?" After a brief hesitation, Ethan nodded. "Yes, she is your sister." Despite the differences in height and appearance, Gwen was indeed the elder sister by design, an awakening order. Ethan then conducted a series of tests with the two artificial maids at the testing ground to verify their functionalities and made some minor adjustments before officially putting them to work. Maid number 1, Holy Chi-Line Puppet Gwen. Race, Construct Doll, level LV16. Strength, 23. Agility, 20. Intelligence, 20. Perception, 14. Charm, 19. Abilities, Advanced Magic Resistance, Spell Reflection, Speed, Spiritual Core, Holy Mist, Eye of the Sky, Super Speed Regeneration, Iron Will, Spell Focus, Combat Casting, Construction Spells, equivalent to LV12 Caster, Intelligence Casting. Spells, Level 0, Acid Splash, Detect Magic, Mage Hand, Read Magic, Detect Poison, Light, Switch, Cantrip. First level, Charm Person, Oil Souls, Grease, Mage Armor, Constant, Invisible Servant, Alarm, Featherfall. Second level, False Life, Constant, Flash Dust, Wild Laughter, Complete Repair, Mirror Image, Invisibility. Third level, Flying Spell, Lightning Beam, Stinking Cloud. Fourth level, Black Tentacle, Fire Shield, Roar. Fifth level, Death Cloud, Dominate Humans, Wall Penetration. Sixth level, Beast Form, Dissociation, True Seeing, Constant. Seventh level, Advanced Detection, Constant. Advanced Arcane Vision, Constant. Magic items, Universal Scissors. Maid number 2, Clockwork Demon Oriana. Race, Clockwork Doll. Level LV16. Strength 24. Agility 28. Intelligence 20. Perception 11. Charm. Oriana's specifications highlight her as a formidable clockwork doll, designed with precision and equipped with a variety of capabilities to serve her master efficiently. When Ethan emerged from the workshop with the two artificial maids, he realized that more than a week had elapsed since the World Cup's conclusion. In that time, Jaina, Onyxia, Tonks, Cyrilla, and Pinello had been swamped with activities, barely having a moment to themselves. Pinello and Tonks were somewhat better off, having families to attend to their daily needs. However, Jaina, Onyxia, and Cyrilla, being visitors from another world, had no such support here, and were entirely self-reliant for their upkeep. With their schedules filled to the brim, Ethan had been confined to the workshop, depending solely on Chu Zhang and Hermione to alternate their assistance, ensuring that none of them were neglected or left in disarray at home. Despite their efforts, the girls felt the strain of their responsibilities, fearing they might inadvertently assume a maternal role due to the relentless nature of their tasks. Ethan's introduction of Gwen and Oriana as their replacements was a welcome relief. These professional maids, creations of Ethan, were distinct in their capabilities. Under the care of Chu Zhang and Hermione, what once seemed like an endless stream of chores was effortlessly managed by Gwen and Oriana. They efficiently maintained the entire tower and its inhabitants, earning the admiration and approval of everyone, particularly Hermione. Hermione was especially impressed with Ethan's decision to employ constructs instead of house elves, viewing it as a genuine step towards achieving racial equality. Little did she know, Ethan pondered the notion that the existence of a robot also constituted a form of life. Chapter 288. After Ethan's meticulously crafted maid was completed, Jaina and the others finally accomplished the heavy tasks assigned by the Ministry of Magic. Everything had finally settled down. To celebrate this milestone moment, Ethan planned a grand banquet and invited all the close friends from the Genius Club. This celebration was not only to mark the successful completion of a long-term plan, but also to formally introduce his latest masterpiece to everyone. Gwen and Oriana presented a table of sumptuous delicacies to the guests. The deliciousness of the food exceeded what words could describe and earned everyone's praise. The two maids created by Ethan had indeed brought significant improvements to their quality of life. As they enjoyed the food and drink, the conversation turned to the recent achievements of the Ministry of Magic. Tonks, with a cheerful expression, announced, "The decision on expanding Auror authority has been officially promulgated. Scrimgeour's wish has been realized. I have finally obtained the authority we originally agreed upon and can now openly expand our influence among the Aurors. What a happy outcome. Has the result of the trial come out? Hermione asked, more concerned about the fate of those who caused trouble. Women have this peculiar nature. On one hand, they detest evil, but on the other, they can harbor compassion, depending on whether they find themselves in a position of strength or weakness. The Aurors checked their wands one by one and used the pre-flashback curse. Those wizards who had cast the unforgivable curse were exposed, quickly tried, and imprisoned in Azkaban, Tonks explained. Those whose crimes were unknown were temporarily detained in small cells at the Ministry of Magic. We have been collecting evidence against them since then. Now that the Aurors had conclusive evidence, most of them were sent to Azkaban. Azkaban has become so overcrowded that old and new prisoners had to be mixed together. Tonks's words cast a brief silence over the room, like a heavy stone dropped into a calm lake. Speaking of which, Cyrilla did something great before. Gianna said, putting down her fork with great interest. Penelo nodded repeatedly, looking at Cyrilla with eyes full of admiration, while Cyrilla shyly turned her head away under everyone's gaze. Ethan, curious about their mysterious attitude, looked at Gianna suspiciously. Gianna smiled slightly and began to share. Yesterday night, after the enforcement department processed almost all the prisoners, I launched a meeting to review the lessons learned that day. However, during the meeting, a small argument broke out among the Aurors. Some mentioned the performance of the senior Aurors, thinking they were far less quick, united, and efficient than the younger people under Tonks. They felt very embarrassed, believed there was a conspiracy, and accused Tonks of not sharing information. Unfortunately, we had already reached cooperation with Scrimgeour, and they could not get his support. Ah, thank you, dear Ethan. You are so considerate. Gianna took the black tea handed over by Ethan and continued. They were not convinced. Ethan took the opportunity to sit next to Gianna, waiting for her next words with great interest. Mad-Eye Alastair Moody was the most impulsive. He took the initiative to challenge Tonks, wanting to prove their strength. He kept claiming that Tonks's tactics were crooked. At this point, Jaina couldn't help but frown. Ethan sneered. That's really self-defeating. The others nodded in agreement. Indeed, Jaina added, Tonks handled the situation very well. She remained calm and didn't take action. She was already the second in command in the Auror office, while Moody was only a senior Auror. With her status, even defeating Moody wouldn't have brought much benefit. Jaina shook her head. At first, I was really afraid that Tonks wouldn't be able to withstand the provocation. Now it seems that after working in a command position for a long time, she has developed a remarkable ability to remain composed under pressure. Ethan immediately lifted his shorts. You have the nerve to talk to me. Tonks was so angry that her hair turned red, and she retorted, At that time, you were so foolish to break in alone, and you were almost attacked by the poacher boss who turned into an animagus. Seeing that the two started to bicker, Jaina coughed dryly. Okay. I know you have known each other for a long time. Do you want to continue listening? After both of them calmed down, Jaina continued. If you ask me, Cyrilla is also a smart and courageous girl. She stands up for herself at such a moment and takes the initiative to challenge. After all, I am Sister Tonks's subordinate, Cyrilla said, embarrassed. And we have long been unhappy with Moody, Penelo added. In any case, her performance was indeed very good. She didn't even draw her sword. With just one move, malicious transformation, she turned Moody into a toad and successfully made him make a fool of himself. Jaina praised highly. Jaina then continued. That stubborn guy, Moody, insisted that Cyrilla used black magic and felt that this game did not count. He also claimed that in a regular duel, Ciri would never be able to match him. After the spell was lifted, he started clamoring for another try. Jaina snorted a sneer, obviously deeply dissatisfied with someone. This is truly a performance that cannot afford to lose. Zhang Chu commented sharply. That's right. Jaina nodded. But Cyrilla was also very tough. She agreed to Moody's request to fight again, and then showed off her superb enchanted swordsmanship, launching a violent attack on Moody. Moody, on the other hand, only successfully cast an iron armor curse at the beginning. After that, he could only parry, and had no power to fight back, completely unable to cast a second spell. In the end, the turtle shell was cut open, and he was defeated again. Jaina recalled Moody's gray and disbelieving look under Cirilla's sword and couldn't help laughing. Despite repeated failures, Moody was still unconvinced. So, Cirilla gave Moody another chance. This third time, Pinello didn't even use a magic spell to directly attack. He just used Tracing Step to teleport behind him, quickly kicked out his legs, and broke his crutches and right leg in one fell swoop. Then he kicked him in the head, knocking him unconscious for several hours. Seeing the miserable end of Moody's 3-game losing streak, those veteran aurors were left speechless. Jaina was full of praise for Cirilla. Not only because she defeated a veteran auror, which was nothing to Cirilla's strength, but also because she crushed him in 3 consecutive victories. This greatly damaged the morale of the veteran aurors, and at the same time built confidence in the younger faction. Now Moody had no shame in remaining in the auror office. Wounded all over, he resigned to Scrimgeour on the grounds that he had to go to Hogwarts in advance to prepare lesson plans. Jaina smiled and shook her head, feeling that this Mad-Eye Moody was really cute and stupid, thinking of escaping to deal with it. The banquet ended in this joyful atmosphere, and Ethan and the others went to bed early. Not only because of the hard work for days, but also because tomorrow they will go to receive another harvest of theirs. The banquet that Lucius Malfoy invites them to will be tomorrow. Chapter 289. On the evening of the next day, Jaina, Onyxia, and Ethan arrived at the gates of Malfoy Manor in Wiltshire as planned. Most of their acquaintances had declined the invitation. Tonks, for instance, abstained due to her mother, Andromeda, who was a biological sister to Draco's mother, Narcissa Malfoy. The Black family, to which their mother belonged, also included another sister, Bellatrix Lestrange, a fervent follower of the Dark Lord. Andromeda had distanced herself from her sisters early on due to ideological differences and married a Muggle-born Mr. Tonks. Consequently, Nymphadora Tonks harbored little affection for her pure-blood relatives. Similarly, the rest of their circle, sharing comparable sentiments, preferred not to associate with the high-ranking purebloods. Ultimately, only Jaina and Onyxia, both employed at the Ministry of Magic, along with the pivotal figure Ethan, chose to participate. Upon their arrival, Lucius Malfoy personally welcomed them at the manor's entrance, his demeanor indicating he had been awaiting their arrival for some time. Dressed in a solemn black robe, he greeted Ethan with a warm smile, saying, "Welcome, Mr. Green, Miss Proudmoore, 623, and Miss Prestor. It's a pleasure to have you here." He then bowed slightly, gesturing for them to follow him inside, where many guests had already gathered. Ethan nodded, and they ascended the stairs together. The Malfoy Manor, a testament to one of the oldest and most affluent pure-blood families, contrasted with the Black family's residence, which was cluttered with various artifacts. The Malfoy Manor boasted antique furniture and was rich in history. Lucius assumed the role of a tour guide, elaborating on the various sculptures and portraits adorning the corridor, as well as the Malfoy family's history. Unlike many pure-blood families, the Malfoys' origins were akin to those of Muggle nobility. The wizard Armand Malfoy, an ancestor of the family, had arrived in England with William the Conqueror's invading Norman army. For his services, the first Malfoy was granted a prime piece of land in Wiltshire by King William I, marking the establishment of Malfoy Manor. Before the International Statute of Wizarding Secrecy was enacted in 1692, the Malfoy family had successfully integrated into Muggle high society. An ancestor, also named Lucius Malfoy, had even courted Elizabeth I, leading some wizarding historians to speculate that the Queen's decision to remain unmarried was due to a curse cast by a spurned Malfoy. Over the years, the Malfoy family expanded their estate by annexing surrounding Muggle lands and ventured into various financial endeavors, amassing considerable wealth and becoming one of Britain's richest wizarding families. Although initially opposed to the Statute of Secrecy, they quickly cut ties with Muggle families and denied any significant involvement with them. Among pure-blood factions, the Malfoys were relatively moderate, eschewing the fanaticism of families like the Blacks, Gaunts, or Lestranges. They valued blood purity but avoided incestuous marriages that could lead to their decline. instead accepting marriages with half-blood wizards. This pragmatism was a key factor in Lucius's decision to ally with Ethan. Despite the Malfoy family's collection of antiques and their aristocratic demeanor, their home's furnishings, convenience, and even the magical defense system paled in comparison to Ethan's tower, which was constructed to the specifications of a mage's tower. After completing their tour of Malfoy House, Lucius led them to. In the hall, the atmosphere was already quite warm. Candlelight flickered on the long table, where silver tableware gleamed amidst an array of food and wine. The banquet was well attended, with guests predominantly dressed in the manner of pure-blood families, indicating their close ties with the Malfoys. Among them, Ethan noticed a few were actually Death Eaters, like Lucius Malfoy, including staunch allies such as the Elder Crabbe and Goyle. Other notable families, like the Arkansans and the Greengrasses, were also present. However, their conversations steered clear of Voldemort or Death Eaters, likely due to the presence of guests unaffiliated with such groups. The restraint in their discussions didn't mask the fact that many of these pure-blood families had a knack for survival, as evidenced by their participation in recent events without any repercussions or Azkaban sentences. This was particularly notable given Ethan's role in the large-scale dimensional anchor and the subsequent Auror Core encirclement that had nearly decimated the culprits involved. In addition to the adults, Ethan saw many familiar faces among his peers. Draco Malfoy, the host, was joined by his usual companions, Crabbe and Goyle, as well as Astoria Greengrass, her sister Daphne, Pansy Parkinson, and the Caro twins, Hestia and Flora. The gathering almost resembled a Slytherin reunion. Astoria, Hestia, and Flora, all members of the Erudite Society, greeted Ethan with more enthusiasm than even Draco, the host. Lucius Malfoy's disapproving glare at Draco, comparing his son's lack of charm to Ethan's, underscored the event's dual nature as both a social gathering and an opportunity for the younger generation to mingle. Despite Ethan's general reservations about Slytherins, he found himself enjoying the company of those in the Erudite Society. His Muggle origins made their acceptance noteworthy, especially within a house known for its blood purity doctrine. However, Ethan's perception was challenged when he overheard some pure-blood families speculating, rather offensively, about his lineage. This moment revealed another facet of Slytherin ambition beyond blood purity, the value placed on power and influence. Astoria Greengrass stood out as an exception among her peers. Unlike the typical Slytherin, she showed no signs of blood prejudice or cunning, embodying kindness more akin to a Hufflepuff. Her upbringing in a Death Eater family made her goodness all the more remarkable. Despite suffering from a debilitating blood curse, Astoria remained diligent in her studies within the Erudite Society, earning Ethan's respect and care. Having just completed her first year, her resilience and character were commendable. Ethan was assigned to work in the logistics department of the Boshan Society as Jiangchu's deputy. Today, a young girl was tugging at Ethan's sleeve, excitedly reporting to him the results of her magic practice during the holidays. "Lord Ethan, look, I can now use Arcane Missile," the girl said excitedly, pulling out her wand to demonstrate on the spot. Before Ethan could intervene, he saw a small string of purple missiles emerge from the tip of her wand, shooting towards the chandelier on the ceiling. Just as the missile was about to collide with the chandelier, potentially startling everyone at the banquet, Ethan quickly raised his hand and used Counterspell to neutralize the arcane missile. "Sorry, Master Ethan, did I cause trouble again?" Astoria asked, looking at Ethan with a pitiful expression. Her cautious demeanor, coupled with her frail appearance, instantly evoked a strong protective instinct in those around her. "It's okay, Astoria," Ethan reassured her gently. "Actually, I think you've done quite well with Arcane Missile. You're probably the first among the first-year wizards to master this spell." Ethan's praise was sincere. Despite her physical frailty, Astoria's magical talent was indeed remarkable, which was one of the reasons Ethan was inclined to support her. "Really? Thank you, Ethan, for the compliment." The girl's spirits immediately lifted upon hearing his words. She looked at Ethan with eyes full of admiration, becoming yet another young admirer, following in the footsteps of Ginny and Jiangchu. Observing the delicate girl in front of him, who seemed pale and fragile, Clutching her chest at every turn, Ethan pondered. Given that the purpose of this banquet was to introduce Jaina to the allies of the Malfoy family, Ethan suddenly had a new idea regarding Astoria. Chapter 290, The Strategy for Pure Blood Support. Ethan Green and Jaina sought to begin their influence campaign with the Malfoy family for two primary reasons. Firstly, they aimed to expand Jaina's influence within the Ministry of Magic. Secondly, they intended to undermine Voldemort by covertly infiltrating his ranks. With Voldemort's resurrection on the horizon, Ethan, Jaina, and Onyxia unanimously agreed that their most formidable adversaries in the future would be Dumbledore and Voldemort. Both individuals not only wielded significant personal power, but also commanded substantial forces. While other factions, such as the one led by Fudge, the Old Guard centered around Barty Crouch Sr., and unaffiliated wizards like Bones, the head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, might pose temporary obstacles, they were not seen as permanent barriers to Ethan's objectives. This was largely because Ethan's side possessed superior strength. The slow pace of their progress was attributed to Ethan's preference for a peaceful approach, considering the wizarding population's limited numbers and inability to sustain heavy losses. However, Dumbledore and Voldemort presented unique challenges due to their personal power, which made direct confrontation undesirable. Ethan had no immediate plans to physically eliminate them. His disagreement with Dumbledore was ideological, recognizing that despite their differences, Dumbledore was fundamentally a good person. Ethan, therefore, had no intention of resorting to extreme measures against him. As for Voldemort, while deserving of death, Ethan hoped to use his threat to rally wizards behind Jaina's leadership in the Ministry of Magic, understanding that without addressing the root cause, their followers would remain a problem. Ethan's strategy involved subtle manipulation and alliance building. He opposed Dumbledore directly, but sought to win over key members of the Order of the Phoenix, such as the Weasley family and Sirius Black. Regarding the Death Eaters, Ethan aimed to convert the disillusioned ones, with Lucius Malfoy being a pivotal figure in this plan. By leveraging Lucius, Ethan hoped to undermine Voldemort's support base effectively. At a banquet hosted by Lucius Malfoy, Jaina and Onyxia were introduced to influential pureblood wizards, showcasing the Malfoys' awareness of the shifting power dynamics in the Ministry of Magic post-riot. Lucius's increasing deference to Ethan and Jaina, and his efforts to facilitate connections for them, including finding properties for Jaina, reflected his recognition of their rising influence. The banquet was largely successful, with most pureblood families showing interest in their cause, except for a few staunch Voldemort loyalists. During the event, Ethan discreetly spoke with Lucius, leading to Lucius arranging a private meeting with the head of the Greengrass family and the Astoria sisters afterward. This move further demonstrated the strategic alliances being formed to consolidate Ethan and Jaina's power base within the wizarding community. Gaholis Greengrass had arranged a clandestine meeting, the purpose of which was unknown to Garygos until he realized it was to meet Ethan. Astoria, overly concerned about Ethan, convinced her sister to tail him, eventually witnessing both their father and Ethan entering the same room. Astoria, familiar with her father's temperamental nature, feared the worst upon their meeting. She wasn't worried about her father harming her idol. Rather, she feared her father would be the one to suffer defeat. Astoria had no doubts about Ethan's capabilities, viewing her father as generally reasonable despite his gruff demeanor. "Why is it you?" Garygos exclaimed upon recognizing the Muggle-born Ethan in the study. His face contorted with anger as he turned to Lucius Malfoy, accusing him of betrayal for arranging the meeting despite Garygos's explicit refusal to collaborate with Muggle-borns. His suspicion of Lucius's loyalty was evident. "Be careful, Garygos," Lucius warned, his face tense, urging Garygos to show respect in Ethan's presence. However, this only fueled Garygos's anger, accusing Lucius of betraying their cause and siding with Muggles. Disheartened by Lucius's perceived betrayal, Garygos threatened to leave, unaware that his daughters were eavesdropping just beyond the door. "You can't leave," Ethan's voice halted Garygos, carrying an authoritative tone that instinctively commanded obedience. Despite his initial arrogance, Garygos found himself compelled to sit, influenced by Ethan's suggestion technique. Ethan, unfazed by Gyarados' rudeness, had already gauged his true emotions and character. He confidently assured Gyarados that his current demeanor would lead to future regret. Ethan then subtly hinted at a solution to the blood curse that plagued the Greengrass family, capturing Gyarados' full attention. Both Gyarados and his daughters, still listening from outside, were intrigued by the possibility. Gyarados, however, was skeptical, citing the curse's long history and the failure of many great wizards, including Dumbledore, to resolve it. "Why can't I do it?" Ethan responded calmly, challenging Gyarados' skepticism. He asserted that age was not a barrier to genius, and that his unique knowledge and achievements in the wizarding world positioned him as capable of solving the blood curse. This bold claim left Gyarados speechless, opening the door to a potential breakthrough for the Greengrass family. A Muggle, so arrogant, yet he refrained from voicing his thoughts. Upon reflection, Ethan had indeed achieved many feats that were nothing short of unprecedented. His victories over various dark magical creatures were just a part of his accomplishments. His prowess in Quidditch was also noteworthy. However, these achievements seemed irrelevant when it came to curing a blood curse. The modest display of magic his daughter had shown him during the holidays was proof of his talent, yet such basic magic fell short of addressing the complexities of blood spells. Then there was the matter of Ethan being the first successful magical animagus in history. "Wait, animagus!" As Gariho recounted Ethan's achievements, a spark of hope ignited in his eyes. He suddenly looked at Ethan, his voice trembling slightly as he shifted to a more respectful tone. "Mr. Green, what do you mean? Do you believe that transforming into an animagus holds the key to curing Stolia's blood curse?" Seeing Ethan nod in affirmation, Gariho asked with a hint of disbelief. "In other words, Mr. Green, are you suggesting that you possess a method to heal my daughter's blood?" He harbored no doubts regarding Ethan's capabilities in this area, especially considering Ethan's historic achievement in becoming a magical animagus. This alone demonstrated that he was the most skilled mage in the realm of animagus transformation, surpassing even Dumbledore in authority on the subject. In this matter, Gariho found himself placing his trust entirely in Ethan. With hopeful eyes, he watched as Ethan nodded once more. Update 5 Force, additional update 55. Please support me with custom orders, flowers, monthly votes, reviews, and rewards. If you have votes, kindly cast them my way as the author. Your support is incredibly important to me. Chapter 291, Facing the Eager Gary Haas. Ethan did not immediately respond to Gary Haas's eager inquiries. Instead, he began from the start. "In fact, I took notice of your daughter after she joined my erudite society," he explained slowly. "I greatly admire her kindness, generosity, and understanding. She doesn't seem like a typical Slytherin at all." Astoria, who was secretly listening outside the door, felt a surge of emotions, her cheeks flushing with warmth. Ethan continued, "Then, I noticed something unusual about her and detected a curse. I learned about the blood curse." This statement was not entirely truthful. Ethan had known about Astoria's blood curse from his previous life, but he understood it was harmless. "Since discovering the curse, I've thought it a shame for such a wonderful girl to be hindered by it. That's when I started paying closer attention to her, even collecting her hair and blood samples to research a cure for the curse." Upon hearing Ethan's secret actions, Astoria's cheeks reddened even more. "Secretly collecting hair? Master Ethan must be too embarrassed," she muttered, covering her face, though her sister just rolled her eyes at her. Inside, Ethan pressed on. "For a long time, I made no progress until I explored the magic of becoming an animagus." This, too, was a fabrication. Ethan had formulated a plan after some initial research, but had waited until now to act on it. "After mastering animagus transformation, I gained a deeper understanding of transformation magic, which led me to insights about the blood curse. Now, I have a general idea of how to cure it." Ethan gestured for patience before asking, "So, patriarchs of the sacred pureblood families, can you tell me the main features of an animagus?" Gary Haas, sensing something amiss yet desperate for his daughter's well-being, complied with an answer akin to that of a diligent Hogwarts student. "An animagus transformation allows a wizard to turn into an animal closely related to their essence, with the ability to revert back to human form," Gary Haas explained. "Good. Ethan nodded, then inquired about the specifics of the blood curse affecting Astoria. Gary Haas detailed the curse's inheritance through the maternal line and the gradual, uncontrollable transformations into a specific animal, which, in Astoria's case, was a fox. This revelation was a painful secret of the Greengrass family, with each afflicted member eventually becoming a fox. At this juncture, Gary Haas, still unclear on Ethan's intentions, implored him to disclose any potential cure, offering the support of the Greengrass family in return. Ethan inwardly acknowledged Gary Haas's dedication. Despite his allegiance to Voldemort, it was evident he was a father who deeply loved his daughter. It was remarkable that the Greengrass family, staunch purists, had raised a daughter as kind-hearted as Astoria, who thrived despite her family's rigid beliefs. Andromeda Tonks, who shared her attitude, ended up having a falling out with her two sisters and was expelled from the Black family in one fell swoop. The psychic induction before the conversation and the words of the other party now prove this. But since the other party has such a character, Ethan will naturally not seek compensation. Ethan's eyes widened in surprise, and he shook his head with a smile. "Oh, you misunderstood. I never wanted compensation from the Greengrass family in this matter. I wanted to help Astoria purely based on my own beliefs and my appreciation for her. Besides, what could you possibly offer to help me, eh?" These words made Grillo's face turn red. Astoria, listening from outside the door, was so moved that she choked with sobs. Daphne also significantly changed her attitude towards Ethan. "The reason I asked so many questions was merely to fully exchange information with Astoria's family so that she could be cured," Ethan explained sternly, and Garios could no longer maintain his composure. He stood up and bowed to Ethan to apologize. "I'm sorry, Mr. Green. I judged a man with a villain's heart. You are indeed a great wizard, but the Greengrasses are not ungrateful. I swear, if you can truly heal Astoria, you will gain the loyalty of the Greengrass family forever. Even if you fail, the Greengrasses will always be your friends. Indeed, using different attitudes to win over different people works wonders." Ethan accepted the other party's oath with a smile and continued. "What I must admit is that based on my current research, I have no way to cure the blood curse on your daughter, because this curse is not targeted at your sister personally, but at the blood flowing in the female members of your family. Even if I have the ability to cast spells on your sister regularly, the nature of the curse causes it to reapply to the new blood within her body." Ethan raised his eyebrows and explained the difficulty first, but Grillos did not despair. He asked, "Mr. Green, you mentioned before that the magical animagus transformation gave you inspiration. This means that you have other solutions, right?" "Smart. You know that I am a magical animagus and have the unprecedented ability to transform into magical creatures, but you don't know how I acquired this ability. In fact, it was an unexpected gain." Ethan showed admiration. "I wonder if you were surprised when learning the animagus transformation. The process of this transformation spell is complicated, and the rituals are cumbersome. It seems to be incompatible with our existing modern spells." Grillos and Lucius in the room looked at each other after hearing this and nodded in agreement. Ethan is right. The ritual of transforming into an animagus is indeed very strange, involving mandrake leaves and waiting for a thunderstorm, among other peculiarities. According to my research, in fact, the animagus transformation is not a native spell of our wizards, but originated from ancient druidism. Ethan revealed the secret he knew. The teachings of the Druid religion are about integration with nature. They are proficient in spells of controlling animals and plants. Transforming into animals is their special skill because in this way they can better blend into nature. You mean the blood curse, like the animagus transformation, has its roots in druidism? Grillos suddenly realized. Ethan nodded. That's right. Therefore, if you want to avoid this curse, you must use druid methods. It turns out that's the case. No wonder no one has been able to touch the blood curse for hundreds of years. It turns out that this is because it comes from druidism, and wizard magic can't do anything to it. Grillos felt he understood everything. In other words, what do you think about druidry? He asked Ethan tentatively and received an affirmative answer. A smile appeared on Ethan's face. If I didn't understand druidism, How could I have the magical animagus transformation? In this world, you can't find anyone who understands druidism better than me. As the only druid in the world, Ethan was indeed qualified to make such claims. As he spoke, he rose from his seat, and the shoulder blades on his back suddenly protruded, sprouting a pair of eagle wings while he maintained his human form, resembling an angel. "What are you doing?" Lucius exclaimed in surprise, standing up. "Is this also an animagus transformation?" He immediately connected it to the chimera transformation that included a pair of eagle wings. "Yes, it's a partial animagus transformation. This is my latest research achievement and hasn't been publicly revealed yet," Ethan admitted openly. He had managed to transform only a part of his body, leaving the rest in human form. This method was unprecedented and marked a significant breakthrough in animagus magic. At this point, Gurios was fully convinced that Ethan was the foremost expert on druid magic in the world. Although he still didn't grasp Ethan's specific treatment plan, the sight of Ethan with wings spread like an angel in the darkness of despair made him believe he was witnessing a miracle. "Mr. Green, please instruct us. As long as Astoria regains her health, we will support you in any way necessary," he said eagerly. Ethan, standing with his hands behind his back, began to explain. The mechanism of the blood curse is somewhat similar to the dilemma faced by unsuccessful animagi, where the animal nature overwhelms the human nature. However, while animagus transformation can avoid this issue, the blood curse makes it inevitable. With my understanding of druidism, I've developed a method for actively choosing animagus transformation. Thus, my plan is to counteract the blood curse transformation through a new animagus form. As we know, each person can only have one animagus form. Given that the blood curse and animagus transformation share a common origin, the blood curse transformation and the animagus form of the patient must be the same creature. Under normal circumstances, blood curse patients cannot undergo animagus transformation, as it's seen as willingly engaging with wild power, which could accelerate the curse. However, with my method, she can choose to replace the cursed wildness with that of another creature, rendering the curse ineffective. "That's incredible." Gurios, overwhelmed with emotion, covered his face and wept. "So, what do you need from me?" "The only thing required is for Astoria to learn the animagus transformation from me," Ethan concluded. He added, "Since this is my first attempt to ensure a more effective counteraction of the curse, I'll choose a high-level species similar to the fox for Astoria." "Do you mean she'll transform into a magical creature related to the fox?" Gurios quickly grasped Ethan's intention and promised, "Don't worry, Mr. Green. I swear the Greengrass family will never attempt to uncover the secret of transforming into a magical creature and will keep your method a secret." Ethan nodded, then added, "Thinking about it, maybe the blood curse can no longer be considered a curse in the future? I can't cure the curse that may affect you and the female members of your family in the future, but it seems we don't need to cure it now, right?" Ethan's words were left hanging, but both Gurios and Lucius understood their true meaning. Ethan had not only saved Astoria, but potentially the future of the Greengrass family. At that moment, the door burst open, and Astoria, unable to contain herself any longer, rushed in and gave Ethan a firm hug, even standing on tiptoes to kiss his cheek. Daphne joined in, hugging Ethan from the other side. Witnessing this scene, Gurios Greengrass's expression softened slightly, and finally, he sighed. In doing so, the Greengrass family's destiny became inextricably linked to the boy before them, essentially amounting to a betrayal of Voldemort. In the future, they might find themselves seeking asylum from Ethan. Given his potential, he is poised to become a figure comparable to Dumbledore, a formidable force on par with Voldemort. Under these circumstances, it actually seems quite reasonable for the two girls to grow closer to him. Chapter 292. The Swift Passage of Summer. The remaining days of summer vacation swiftly passed, and the start of the new school year at Hogwarts was just around the corner. During this period, the weather was far from pleasant. Continuous clouds blurred the distinction between day and night, while raindrops hammered on the roof, their rhythm interspersed with the shrill whistling and moaning of strong winds. Unable to tolerate these conditions any longer, Ethan cast Control Weather near the tower, dispersing the cumulonimbus clouds above his house and creating a sunny oasis with a radius of 1 kilometer. However, his enjoyment of this artificially created sunny day was short-lived, as he was set to return to Hogwarts the following day. In Ethan's room, textbooks and stationery for the new term were piled haphazardly. Standard Spells, Level 4 by Miranda Gorshak was placed atop the pile. Additionally, there was a new quill pen and 12 volumes of parchment among other items. Although these textbooks were no longer of much use to him, maintaining the ritual of preparing for a new term was still important to him as a student. At that moment, Ethan found himself staring bewilderedly at several robes and dresses. "Tonks, are you sure these are meant for school and not for some palace banquet?" he asked, eyeing a purple velvet robe adorned with white ruffles, unable to decide whether to laugh or cry. The school's list for the year included dress robes for formal occasions such as dances, which seemed to have excited the women in Ethan's life. The Levin sisters and even Onyxia had enthusiastically chosen dresses for him. "Hey, isn't this dress formal enough?" Tonks replied, puzzled by Ethan's question. "My mother really likes this dress. She selected it carefully. It's in some kind of palace style." It turned out the dress was chosen by Ms. Andromeda, which explained its old-fashioned appearance. "I understand it's formal, but don't you think it's a bit too much? Consider this. There's no royal family or palace nowadays. That era ended over 100 years ago," Ethan explained, trying to convey the anachronism of the dress to Tonks. After understanding Ethan's point, Tonks seemed to realize the issue, acknowledging the generational gap in their perception of history. Seeing Tonks retreat, Jaina approached with excitement. "Ethan, what do you think of the dress I prepared for you? I made it myself." Ethan examined the dress Jaina handed him. It was primarily dark blue with gold trim, featuring a uniform pattern, neatly arranged golden buttons, exaggerated lapels, a grand coat of arms, long tassels on the shoulders, and a pleated white linen scarf at the chest. "Isn't this a Kul Tiras navy dress?" Ethan recognized the inspiration immediately. "Your style is even older than Tonks's. I might as well wear an Auror uniform." Jaina's design harked back to the 18th century, a time when ships were wooden and armed with rows of cannons, much like the Kul Tiras fleet in World of Warcraft. Interestingly, the uniforms Ethan designed for the Aurors were inspired by Assassin's Creed Unity, which is also set in the 18th century. Sorry, Jaina said, sticking out her tongue in embarrassment. "That is my homeland, after all, so I subconsciously modeled it after them." Realizing the significance of her gesture, Ethan looked at Jaina with softened eyes. However, the idea of wearing such a dress to a ball was out of the question. "Let's put this dress in the closet for now. It won't be too late to wear it when we open the door to travel through the world and visit other places," he suggested, setting aside the dress for a more appropriate occasion. Ethan put away the dress made by Gianna and turned his attention to the next one. "Onyxia's dress is normal, but what's with the shoulder decorations on your dress?" He couldn't help but complain as he examined the large waistcoat covered with scales and huge dragon horns. "Does your Black Dragon clan have this kind of aesthetic? It's too unique." Ethan felt that if he went out wearing this outfit, he would likely not be seen as attending a dance, but rather participating in a gladiatorial contest. "Forget it, all of you. Your aesthetics are so outdated, I'd better make the dresses myself." Ethan shook his head, giving up on finding a suitable dress from them. The next day, Ethan headed to King's Cross Station alone. Cirilla, who had originally planned to accompany him, had graduated, leaving Ethan feeling a bit out of sorts. As soon as Ethan teleported to the station, rain poured down on him. To avoid attracting the attention of ordinary people, Ethan couldn't use magic to block the rain. The maid Gwen thoughtfully transformed the scissors into an umbrella. Despite this, Ethan was still wet when they crossed the busy street and boarded platform 9¾ Boarding the Hogwarts Express had become a familiar routine for him, but this year felt very different. The dark red steam locomotive, spitting out billowing smoke, stood on the platform. Through the smoke, the trains and the many Hogwarts students and parents appeared like dark ghosts. As Ethan walked among them, whispers began to spread. "Look, it's Ethan Green." "It's really Ethan Green. Where is he? Is it that chaser, Ethan?" Recognized immediately, the platform quickly turned into Ethan's impromptu autograph session. He worked hard to satisfy the enthusiastic fans, making his way through the crowd to board the train. By the time Ethan boarded, it was already late, and most of the compartments were occupied. As the train started moving, Ethan moved along the carriage, overhearing conversations about Hogwarts. The sound of raindrops pattering against the glass windows couldn't drown out the voices from the corridor ahead. "Ha! You don't know?" Draco Malfoy's drawn-out voice could be heard, followed by Ron's angry retort. "You are shouting so loudly, there's no need to eavesdrop, okay?" Malfoy jeered, mocking Ron and Harry for their eagerness to participate in whatever was being discussed, citing their financial status and love for attention. His followers, Crabbe and Goyle, laughed along. "What are you talking about?" Ron asked angrily, to which Malfoy responded with a taunt about Ron's family's supposed ignorance of Ministry of Magic affairs, a privilege Malfoy claimed due to his father's high-level contacts. The carriage fell silent when Ethan appeared. Malfoy's voice choked off as if a duck suddenly strangled, and even Harry and Ron ceased their conversation. Harry hesitated, while Ron turned his face away. Ethan nodded politely to them and continued forward through the carriage. Watching Ethan's retreating back, Harry felt a mix of emotions. It was a melancholy reflection. In the past, his relationship with Ethan had been so close. No, he decided to take the initiative, so he watched Ethan's retreating figure, planning to approach him later. Ethan, however, seemed indifferent to their past camaraderie. He quickly found his seat in a large compartment where Hermione, Luna, and Ginny were already seated in a row. Across from them sat Zhang Chu and Marietta. Upon seeing Ethan, they greeted him with joyful waves. As the train continued its journey northward, the rain intensified, casting a gloomy pall over the landscape. The sky darkened, and the windows of the carriage were veiled with condensation. In response, lanterns were lit, casting a warm glow despite the broad daylight outside. Chapter 293, A Silent Challenge. When Ethan sat in the box, several people were already engaged in conversation, though much of it was lost on the majority. Chang, Ginny, and Luna were conversing in plain language, but Hermione was the one who kept talking incessantly. After the tumultuous events of that night, Hermione, burdened by her sense of responsibility, began to blame herself. She believed her inability to assist Ethan during the chaos was due to her own weaknesses. Being sent back to the tower was a humiliation in her eyes. Determined to grow stronger, Hermione recalled Ethan once mentioning he could assist others in becoming magical animagi. Seizing this opportunity for empowerment, she embarked on the animagus transformation process, which involved consuming a mandrake leaf and entering a month of silent meditation. Despite her vow of silence, Hermione found herself unable to stop humming. What was she just saying? Ethan, taking his seat, looked at the girls with a puzzled expression and asked for a translation. Hermione is probably saying that this month is a great chance for her to practice casting spells silently, Luna offered eagerly. As a scion, she had a better grasp of Hermione's intentions than the others. With the mandrake in her mouth, she's likely to master silent spellcasting, achieving 2 goals at once. Ethan couldn't help but smile at Hermione's determined face. "Don't get ahead of yourself. If Professor Snape catches wind of this, he'll bombard you with questions. You know how he feels about Gryffindor," he said, shaking his head in mock sympathy. "You'll be miserable. This semester, you'll be Gryffindor's biggest misfortune." The group nodded in agreement, realizing the truth in Ethan's words. If Professor Snape discovered a mute lion, he would undoubtedly seize the opportunity to interrogate and deduct points. But beyond Snape's disdain, the prospect of a speechless Hermione was amusing in itself. The usually verbose Miss Know-It-All, rendered silent, was a source of mirth. Hermione, suddenly realizing the implications, panicked. She had overlooked the potential consequences of her silence. "Silence is humanity's greatest sorrow," Luna mused, her voice taking on a melodious quality. She raised her copy of The Quibbler, now featuring limited edition Quidditch content, to hide her face. That summer, The Quibbler had made waves with Luna's exclusive stories and Rita Skeeter's contributions, especially during the World Cup and the subsequent Ministry of Magic interviews following the riots. Now, with the launch of the Fantasy Species Project, The Quibbler was set to spotlight mythical creatures, further boosting its popularity. As Hermione wrestled with her anxiety, the Weasley twins, followed by Harry and Ron, entered the carriage and opened the box door. Ron, already in a foul mood from being dragged to a different compartment by Harry, demanded updates on the Hogwarts situation. His frustration was compounded by the secrecy surrounding him. Harry, however, paid no mind to Ron's complaints. His attention fixed on the carriage ahead, where he had hoped to catch up with Ethan, only to find an unexpected gathering. Harry encountered an unexpected surprise. Ethan, Hermione, Kim Ni, and Luna were gathered on one side, while Marietta and Chu Zhang were seated on the other. Harry had initially intended to approach Ethan, but to his astonishment, he also met his crush, Chu Zhang. It felt like a dream. Dream or not, Harry was determined to seize this rare opportunity to sit next to Chu Zhang. He scanned the area vigilantly for any potential threats. The twins seemed to be there solely to discuss some business matters with Ethan and showed no interest in staying. That left Ron as the only competition. Without hesitation, Harry took the chance and sat down beside Chu Zhang, inhaling a unique fragrance that left him feeling almost intoxicated. Ron was relegated to the far end of the bench. Hermione, do you know anything special happening this semester? Unable to get an answer for his brother, Ron turned to Hermione. He had wanted to ask Ethan, the most powerful wizard at Hogwarts, but considering their recent estrangement, Ron reluctantly directed his question to Hermione. Despite a past conflict over scabbers, Ron and Hermione had managed to reconcile, provided they avoided discussing Ethan. When Ron pressed for details, Hermione remained silent, prompting Ron to label girls as unpredictable. Confused by Hermione's attitude, unaware she had a mandrake leaf in her mouth, Ron sought information from the twins. Fred and George, however, refused to divulge anything, citing it as top-secret information, even known to their brother Charlie, who worked at a dragon farm in Romania. As Ron argued with the twins, Harry savored a moment of tranquility. He cherished the journey on the Hogwarts train, not just as an escape from his detestable aunt's home to Hogwarts, his beloved school, but also for the chance to share a room with Chu Zhang. He fantasized about being closer to her, but his daydream was interrupted when Chu Zhang suddenly stood up. In his attempt to follow, Harry stumbled and nearly fell onto Ron. Watching Chu Zhang and Marietta leave the compartment, Harry felt a pang of loss. Don't go. I wanted to spend more time with you, he thought. Once they were out of sight, Harry's heart sank. Harry, what's wrong? Ron asked, taking Chu Zhang's seat and comforting Harry. Chu Zhang, why did they leave? Harry murmured. Chu Zhang is a Ravenclaw prefect. She has duties to attend to, Ginny explained, having observed Harry's actions from across the compartment. She was taken aback by Harry's overt affection for Chu Zhang, wondering why he couldn't show her even a fraction of that attention. Ginny admired Ethan for his impartiality towards everyone, a stark contrast to Harry's behavior towards Chu Zhang. This difference highlighted a subtle dynamic, especially considering how Chu Zhang pursued Ethan, which Ginny found intriguing compared to Harry's adulation. Ginny Weasley found herself contemplating the hierarchy of admiration and loyalty, likening it to a chain of servitude where she felt positioned at the very bottom. The realization was disheartening. In a moment of clarity, she questioned why she should settle for being a mere follower in this chain. Why not aim higher and seek direct admiration from Ethan, whom she secretly adored? After all, she was a fervent fan of his. Ginny's thoughts were a whirlwind of ambition and resolve, while Harry and Ron stumbled upon a revelation of their own. They noticed the exceptional size of the carriage they were in, far larger than the standard ones. The seats, luxuriously cushioned with velvet, offered comfort unlike any they had experienced before. It dawned on them that they were in the prefect's carriage, a privilege belonging to Zhang Chu. The difference between this and the ordinary carriages was stark, akin to comparing first class to economy seating. In a casual conversation, Ron broached the subject of who might become the next year's prefects. The female prefect has to be Hermione. She's always top of our class. She's done so much, even helping Ethan manage the study group. Her reputation is only growing, he mused. When it came to the boys, both Harry and Ron felt a mix of hope and realism. Despite their aspirations, they recognized their limitations. Their academic performance had been decent in the first 2 years, but without Hermione's guidance, their grades had slipped. Moreover, their tendency to lose points for Gryffindor didn't help their case. They reminisced about their past adventures, acknowledging Ethan's pivotal role in their successes. From protecting the Sorcerer's Stone, where Ethan led them through challenges, to the incident with Tom Riddle's diary and the basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets, it was Ethan who had confronted and overcome the dangers. Even in their 3rd year, when Harry's godfather was exonerated, it felt more like a stroke of luck than a result of their own efforts. Ron's misunderstanding with Hermione, and his altercation with Malfoy only added to their list of misadventures. Despite Harry's talent in Quidditch, Gryffindor had yet to win the Quidditch Cup, making his achievements in the sport feel insufficient. The realization that their record of heroism and academic performance was lacking made them both sigh in resignation. Yet this acknowledgement sparked a determination within them. No, we have to accomplish something significant this year. Professor McGonagall must notice our efforts, they resolved, setting their sights on the goal of becoming prefects. With renewed resolve, Harry and Ron silently vowed to make this year different. Chapter 294. For the remainder of the journey, Harry's mood soured once more. Hermione remained silent, her anger palpable, though Harry couldn't fathom the cause. After completing her rounds, Jiangchu returned to their compartment, but opted to sit at the far end, strategically placing Marietta next to Harry to keep him at bay. Throughout the conversation that followed, Jiangchu engaged Ethan with laughter and enthusiasm, while her responses to Harry seemed half-hearted. She even showed a preference for the snacks Ethan had bought, leaving Harry on the verge of despair. However, before his mood could worsen further, the train finally reached its destination. As the doors opened, thunder echoed, and the young wizards disembarked into a downpour, their heads bowed and eyes squinted against the deluge. The cold rain seemed to drench them completely, leaving them shivering. Harry was about to offer Jiangchu the shelter of a water-repellent cloak when Ethan announced, "Catch me, and I'll take you back to the castle." With that, he grabbed Hermione and Jiangchu, while Luna and Ginny, followed by Marietta, quickly latched onto Ethan. Just as Harry was about to inquire about the situation, Ethan's body ignited with a fiery glow, and in an instant, he and everyone in contact with him vanished, leaving Harry and Ron to face the storm alone. It was a missed opportunity, a consequence of their hesitation to trust Ethan implicitly. Upon reaching the grand dining hall, which was now bustling with activity, Luna translated for Hermione. "She wants to know if that was Phoenix's apparition just now, right?" Ethan, catching the curiosity in their eyes, confirmed, "You guessed it right. It was the Phoenix's apparition. I've managed to master a few tricks regarding the animagus transformation." He explained how he could use the Phoenix's apparition without revealing his transformation, thanks to his mastery of certain techniques. After satisfying their curiosity, Hermione, with a copy of the Book of All Laws she had borrowed from Ethan, sat next to him at the Ravenclaw table. The dining hall was adorned for the new semester's banquet, with hundreds of candles floating above, casting a warm glow on the golden plates and goblets. As Hermione delved into the book, the hall filled with the chatter of students from all 4 houses, along with the faculty seated at a separate table facing their pupils. The students, drenched from the rain, envied Ethan and those with him for their dry arrival, a luxury in the cold weather, and a castle where apparition was forbidden. After the sorting ceremony, the famished students eagerly devoured their meals. Once the last crumbs vanished from the plates, leaving them sparkling clean, the hall quieted down in anticipation of Headmaster Dumbledore's speech. The only sounds were the howling wind and the relentless rain outside. Dumbledore stood, his smile encompassing the room, and announced, "All right, now that we have eaten," his voice carrying a warmth that contrasted with the storm outside, signaling the beginning of another speech that would undoubtedly capture the attention of every student in the hall. After everyone had eaten and drunk their fill, I found it necessary to recapture everyone's attention for a few announcements. Firstly, I regret to inform you that the College Cup Quidditch tournament will not take place this year, Dumbledore announced. A murmur of surprise swept through the auditorium, which then fell into an unexpected silence. Dumbledore continued, "This is due to a large-scale event starting in October that will span the entire school year, demanding considerable time and energy from our teachers. However, I assure you it will be an enjoyable experience for all. I am delighted to announce that this year, Hogwarts will host." At the Gryffindor table, Ron perked up, eager to uncover the secret that had been kept from him. Just as he braced himself for Dumbledore's next words, a thunderous noise erupted. The auditorium doors were flung open, and a man stood in the doorway, leaning on a long cane and cloaked in a black traveling cloak. As all eyes turned to the stranger, a fork-shaped lightning bolt illuminated him. Removing his hood, he revealed long gray hair and a face marred by scars, with a mouth resembling a large, crooked hole and a missing nose. Yet it was his eyes that were most striking, one small, black and shiny, the other large, round, and a vivid, bright blue, which moved independently of the normal eye. Professor Alastor Moody, the defeated general who was bested by Cyrilla 3 times, Ethan recognized him instantly, despite never having met him, thanks to the distinctive magical eye. "Please allow me to introduce our new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher," Dumbledore announced with a smile. "Professor Alastor Moody." However, the introduction was met with silence rather than applause. Dumbledore and Hagrid clapped a few times, but soon ceased when it became apparent that their applause echoed lonely in the silent auditorium. The students, taken aback by Moody's appearance, simply stared. Unperturbed by the attention, Moody began to eat, displaying peculiar habits such as sniffing his food before consuming it with a knife he pulled from his pocket. His normal eye focused on the sausage, while the blue eye continued to rove, observing the auditorium and the students, some of whom had brought their own tableware, a sign of excessive caution. Dumbledore cleared his throat, attempting to regain the students' attention. "As I was saying," he continued with a smile, "we are honored to host a magnificent event that hasn't been held for over a century. I am thrilled to announce that the Triwizard Tournament will be held at Hogwarts this year." This revelation stirred a buzz of excitement among the students, with many eagerly discussing the news. Ron, finally in on the secret, was overjoyed. But as Dumbledore spoke again, the auditorium quieted down. "Some of you may not be familiar with the tournament, so please allow me to explain briefly," Dumbledore said, addressing the newcomers, while the veterans were invited to let their minds wander. He proceeded to outline the Triwizard Tournament, but when he mentioned the death toll, a wave of exclamations broke out. The mention of a death toll naturally caused concern, as it referred not only to the 3 champions. The announcement not only captivated the professors and the audience, but also led Ethan to reflect on a tragic racing incident that occurred in Le Mans, France, in 1955. However, it was clear that the students in the auditorium were not concerned about an event that happened over a century ago. What relevance did it hold for them? "There have been several attempts over the centuries to revive the tournament," Dumbledore announced, "but none of them were successful. However, our Department of International Magical Cooperation and Magical Sports at the Ministry of Magic believes that the time is ripe for another try. We've dedicated a lot of effort this summer to ensure the safety of every participant. In October, the heads of Beauxbatons and Durmstrang will arrive with their carefully selected contenders. The ceremony to select the champions will be held on Halloween. An impartial judge will determine which students are most qualified to compete for the Triwizard Cup, bringing honor to their school, and the winner will receive 1,000 galleons." The mention of 1,000 galleons nearly set the whole castle abuzz. Dumbledore's message was clear. If you seek honor and wealth, strive to become a champion. All the rewards await you. Harry and Ron, recalling their experiences on the train, expressed their eagerness to participate. Becoming a champion and winning on behalf of Hogwarts seemed like a surefire way to earn the title of prefect. Hermione, however, did not join their conversation. Instead, she was engrossed in the Book of All Laws, calmly eating strawberry mousse. "Hermione, how can you still be reading?" Ron asked, puzzled. "Don't you want to participate?" Hermione shook her head and raised a finger. "There's only one spot for Hogwarts," she reminded them. her voice carrying a weight that silenced Harry and Ron. It was Ginny who echoed Hermione's sentiment, highlighting the harsh reality that only one student from Hogwarts could become a champion. Dumbledore spoke again, addressing the eager crowd. I know you all wish to win the Triwizard Trophy for Hogwarts, but the participating schools and the Ministry of Magic have agreed on an age restriction for this year's contenders. Only students over the age of 17 are eligible to register. We believe, Dumbledore continued, his voice growing more serious, this measure is necessary due to the challenging and dangerous nature of the competition. Despite our precautions, it's simply not feasible for students below 6th or 7th year to participate. I, along with the heads of Beauxbatons and Durmstrang, will ensure strict adherence to these rules to prevent underage students from circumventing our fair selection process. From a distance, Ethan and Dumbledore's eyes met. Dumbledore's gaze was unwavering. Therefore, if you are under 17, I implore you not to waste your time applying. Chapter 295. The next morning, the storm had subsided, but the ceiling of the auditorium remained overcast. Ethan, Hermione, and Zhang Chu were having breakfast and reviewing their class schedule for the semester when large groups of thick blue-gray clouds rolled overhead. Despite Headmaster Dumbledore's announcement that the selection process for the Triwizard Tournament would be stringent, determined young wizards like Fred, George, and Lee Jordan were still exploring magical means to age themselves and sneak into the competition. Suddenly, a rustling sound filled the air as 100 owls swooped in through the open window, delivering the morning mail. With everyone now proficient in the mansion technique, Jaina, Tonks, and others no longer needed to bring snacks for Ethan directly. Instead, they would leave gifts in the tower's living room for Ethan to find upon his return. Ethan's owl, Hermer, had essentially become a newspaper delivery bird. Nevertheless, many young wizards still received parcels of various sizes. Neville Longbottom's packages were notably large, often cluttering the space every time he unpacked. For affluent families like the Malfoys and the Greengrasses, it was common for doting relatives to send candies and cakes, eliciting envy from others. Over the holiday, the Malfoy family had grown particularly close to Ethan. Draco Malfoy, eager to share his latest package, rushed over to Ethan as if presenting a treasure. However, Draco found himself disappointed to discover he was not the only one vying for Ethan's attention. Astoria handed Ethan a large package of biscuits, her cheeks flushed with excitement, yet her words mirrored Hermione's. This semester, Hermione wasn't the only one aiming to become an animagus. While Hermione pursued this goal to grow stronger, Astoria was motivated by a desire to save lives. Daphne, acting as her sister's interpreter, explained, Astoria means to say that our mother sent this for you. She wanted us to thank you on her behalf. This public gesture was a first for Astoria, and she was visibly embarrassed. Please, extend my gratitude to Mrs. Greengrass for her kindness, Ethan responded, accepting the gift graciously and immediately sampling the biscuits. Astoria's face lit up with joy before she and her sister returned to the Slytherin table. Here's a gift from my mom, Ethan, Malfoy said, arriving a bit later. Ethan nodded in acknowledgement. Thank her for me as well. Malfoy walked away, his spirits dampened by Ethan's lukewarm response, especially when compared to Astoria's enthusiastic reception. Accepting gifts publicly was one thing, but the stark contrast in reactions was a bitter pill for Malfoy to swallow. On the first day of school, the young wizards encountered a palpable sense of hostility in their herbology class. Professor Sprout introduced them to bubotubers, plant-like entities resembling large black, slimy slugs that emerged straight from the soil, each one squirming slightly and covered in shiny bulges filled with liquid. You need to squeeze them with your hands and collect the pus, Professor Sprout instructed. The bubotuber pus, a viscous, yellow-green liquid reminiscent of troll snot with a pungent gasoline odor, was touted as an effective acne treatment for young wizards. Ethan, who had recently developed an interest in magical plants, found the bubotubers repulsive. His fascination with magical flora might wane if all he encountered were plants like these. Ethan's recent endeavors extended beyond animagus research. He had also delved into the druid profession, seeking to broaden his understanding of magical plants. Ethan's druid ability had significantly improved, reaching the impressive level of LV9. This advancement included an expansion of his wilderness transformation ability, which was more of a fortunate byproduct. Among the new skills he acquired was Enlightenment, a druid spell that allowed Ethan to bestow intelligence upon animals and plants, effectively enabling him to summon beings like tree people. However, Ethan, in the appearance of tree men, ugly and bulky, to be quite unappealing, until he drew inspiration from the bowtruckle. This creature, a blend of animal and plant traits, was a natural gardener and ranger, embodying the essence of a plant spirit known as leshy, or scientifically, tree leshy. Ethan envisioned creating new leshies from other even magical plants. Yet the idea of transforming a babbling tuber into a bobotuber leshy gave him pause. Imagining a group of potato-like creatures with green, pitted skin and bodies covered in bumps and pus joyfully scampering around his garden was far from appealing. This thought alone was enough to make Ethan reconsider his plans, reminding himself that he was a druid, not a creator of life, and certainly not keen on turning his garden into a scene of horror. Ethan's disdain wasn't limited to his herbal medicine class. The care of magical creatures class in the afternoon proved to be even more disheartening. Despite Ethan's suggestions that led to an improved student perception of Hagrid through the use of adorable magical creatures last semester, the new school year saw Hagrid reverting to his old ways. Upon arriving at Hagrid's class, Ethan was greeted not by new magical creatures, but by several open wooden boxes on the ground, emitting strange crackling sounds and occasional faint explosions. Hagrid, ever cheerful, introduced the creature within as the blast-ended scroot, a hybrid of a fire crab and a manticore. Ethan, familiar with the creature from the original stories, initially thought Hagrid's research talents were commendable. However, his opinion quickly soured upon seeing the creatures themselves. Describing the blast-ended scroots as disgusting was an understatement. These creatures, resembling deformed, shell-less lobsters with erratic legs and an indiscernible head, were piled in boxes, their slimy, white-gray bodies emitting a strong smell of rotten fish. The sight of them, along with Hagrid's proud declaration of their rapid growth and the suggestion that the students could enjoy raising them, only served to deepen Ethan's and everyone else's revulsion, particularly among the witches. Ethan had to restrain himself from casting fireballs at the scroots, questioning Hagrid's definition of a cute little guy. His expectations had been significantly lowered, yet the reality of the blast-ended scroots challenged even the most lenient standards of wizarding aesthetics. To other little witches, begging for food became a common sight. All the little witches in the Ravenclaw lounge were fond of Iwu. When teasing Iwu, they would jokingly say that Ethan was her father, and she was Iwu's mother. This sentiment is typical among pet owners. Of course, there was also the notion of taking advantage of Ethan, but such thoughts were never voiced openly. Who would want to raise such an ugly child? Everyone secretly thought. After all, the appearance of pets mattered to them. Our lesson today involves feeding them. You must try feeding them several different things, Hagrid instructed. Gryffindor and Slytherin wizards have discovered that they don't like ant eggs and frog livers. Let's try something else this time. However, the little eagles and badgers still opted for the ant eggs and frog livers, showing a preference to starve rather than feed these to the blast-ended scroots. Ethan searched diligently, but struggled to find where the blast-ended scroots' mouths were. Eventually, he realized that these creatures used the same organ for both eating and drinking. To complicate matters, Ethan noticed a peculiar aspect of the scroots' eating habits. Simply put, whenever one scroot expelled waste, the others would rush to consume it, accompanied by screaming, scratching, and fighting, as if it were a delicacy. This explained the near absence of waste in their enclosure. Yaya, watching anxiously, barked softly, seemingly curious about this delicious food. This reminded Ethan of capybaras, whose digestive systems are inefficient, making their feces nutritious and sought after by many animals. Capybara feces, rich in protein, become more appealing after slight fermentation in the stomach. Thus, some predators prefer the feces over the capybaras themselves. The blast-ended scroot's excrement had become a delicacy for them, not just food, but a form of cooking. However, these creatures were also dangerous due to their explosive tails. Soon after, Ethan's roommate Steve screamed in pain. "Its tail exploded and injured me," he exclaimed, approaching Hagrid with an injured hand. "If you mess with its feces, of course it'll attack you," Hagrid warned loudly. "Don't try to eat that. It's not a chocolate frog." Steve's face flushed with embarrassment. "I didn't eat it. I just wanted to take a closer look." But no one believed him. After class, Ethan approached Hagrid with excitement. "Hagrid, where did you put that manticore?" he inquired, driven by curiosity not about the creature itself, but eager to meet its mother. Ethan had yet to see the manticore. "Oh, that little one is resting in a cave in the Forbidden Forest," Hagrid replied, stroking his messy beard with a smile. "It was exhausted recently. I used 20 fire crabs to get it to conceive, 13 offspring in one pregnancy. It was quite the effort." Ethan was taken aback. The manticore, a notoriously cruel and evil magical creature, suddenly seemed vulnerable in his mind, confused with an innocent child. He imagined it being manipulated by the evil director Hagrid, dressed in cool attire and sitting on a sofa, oblivious to the impending situation. Behind her, a row of formidable figures loomed. "Hagrid, you are such a beast," Ethan thought. Please support the story with custom orders, flowers, monthly tickets, comments, and rewards. Your support is crucial to me. If you have a ticket, I'll make sure it's worth your while. Chapter 296, Before Forgetting. Before Ethan could even consider visiting the manticore, he knew he had to forget those troubling memories. The thought of recalling that infamous scene upon seeing the manticore was something he found utterly distasteful. Upon Ethan's return to the castle, the sound of a quarrel echoing from the foyer reached his ears from afar. The unmistakable, sharp voice indicated that Draco Malfoy was at it again. Draco, under the impression that Ethan and Ron had a falling out and that he had become Ethan's friend, a notion he quite fancied, felt a surge of satisfaction. Emboldened, Malfoy began to taunt Ron and Harry. "Your dad's in the papers, Weasley," Malfoy announced, brandishing a copy of the Daily Prophet for all in the crowded foyer to see. "Listen to this." The article detailed how Arthur Weasley, mistakenly referred to as Arnold, had been involved in an altercation with several Muggle law enforcers the previous day while attempting to assist Mad-Eye Moody. The retired Auror, plagued by what seemed to be delusions of persecution, had clashed with the Muggle police, necessitating Arthur's use of a memory charm. "No wonder Moody was late yesterday," Malfoy sneered. "Think about it, Weasley. They didn't even get your father's name right. He's just a nobody, isn't he?" "Ha, Malfoy, I saw how respectfully you treated Ethan this morning. Was it sweet, receiving your master's approval?" Ron shot back, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "You looked like a pug wagging its tail." "Ron, remember the pug at the World Cup? It nodded and bowed to everyone in the box, desperate not to miss any chance to please its owner. That pug must be your brother Percy, right?" Draco drawled, his eyes narrowing at Ron. The foyer's atmosphere grew tense as the crowd watched the confrontation unfold. Ron, his anger palpable, gripped his wand tightly. "Malfoy, shut up," Harry interjected, trying to defuse the situation. "Ron, calm down." "Oh, and Potter, you stayed with them this summer, right?" Malfoy continued, his tone laced with sarcasm. "Did his brother elevate you to the status of a savior?" Harry responded with a sneer. "And you, Malfoy? Your expression when facing Ethan was like a hungry pug eyeing a juicy bone. Are you brave enough to admit that your flattery is just you hoping Ethan will throw you a bone?" Malfoy's face flushed with anger as he retorted, "Potter, how dare you insult me and Ethan like that? My respect for Ethan is beyond your comprehension." "Then shut your mouth," Harry snapped, casting a disdainful glance at Ethan before turning away. Suddenly, a loud bang startled several onlookers. Ethan observed, amused, that Draco's aim needed improvement as the spell nearly hit Harry instead of Ron. Another bang echoed through the hall, followed by a roar. "Oh, don't do that, boy!" Everyone quickly turned to see Professor Moody descending the marble stairs, his wand pointed at a snow-white stoat trembling on the stone floor, the result of Malfoy's misfired spell. Moody, with his magical eye roving independently, asked Harry in a low, hoarse voice, "Did he hurt you?" "No." Harry replied, "No hit." "Don't touch it," Moody barked, not at Harry but at Crabbe, who had been about to pick up the transformed Malfoy. Moody's gaze seemed to possess a magical quality, allowing him to see behind his head. He limped towards Crabbe, Goyle, and the stoat, which let out a frightened cry and scurried towards the classrooms. "I don't believe this evil," Moody exclaimed, pointing his wand at the stoat. Suddenly, the stoat was lifted 10 feet into the air before crashing back to the ground. With a thud, the stoat, previously Malfoy, hit the ground and then suddenly leaped up again. "What I hate the most is people attacking others from behind," Moody said gruffly, as the stoat jumped higher and higher, screaming in pain. "This is the most filthy, despicable, and cowardly thing to do," he continued. Each time the ferret fell to the stone floor and jumped up again, Moody emphasized his point with a word. Suddenly, there was another loud bang, but this time it wasn't Malfoy who caused it. Everyone's attention shifted to where Professor Moody had been standing. A one-eyed toad was now struggling on the floor, attempting to escape the scene with its short legs. The sight of the toad, angry and making a coo sound, made the young wizards in the foyer laugh, but they quickly suppressed their laughter, remembering the toad's true identity. Ethan stepped forward, pointing his wand at the toad. The toad floated in the air, mirroring the stoat's previous predicament, before falling headfirst to the ground with a snap. It then rose up again, its back secreting a thick, disgusting liquid. Draco Malfoy, still in ferret form, looked up at the toad being subjected to the same treatment, and despite his pain, stood up. His small, bean-sized eyes stared at the flying toad, his constantly shaking tail betraying his excitement. "What I hate the most is people attacking others behind their backs and bullying others," Ethan said, deliberately imitating Moody's tone, before adding in a sinister voice, "How does it feel to revisit this form after leaving the ministry? It seems you did learn some tricks after losing to Cyrilla. For example, malevolent transformation is really useful for bullying the weak, isn't it?" Ethan knew the Moody before him wasn't the real Moody, but it made no difference to him. Revisit? Lost to Cyrilla? The young wizards watching quickly realized they were hearing significant news. Soon, those whose relatives worked in the Ministry of Magic shared the gossip about the incident in the Auror office. Unexpectedly, in addition to playing in the World Cup with Ethan during the summer vacation, Cyrilla Leonlun also became an Auror and defeated a veteran Auror just 2 months after joining. "That's impressive," they whispered among themselves, looking at Moody with a hint of mockery. At that moment, a stern voice interrupted the scene. "Ethan Green!" Professor McGonagall was descending the marble stairs, a stack of books in her arms. "Hello, Professor McGonagall," Ethan greeted calmly, the toad still floating in front of him. What are you doing?" Professor McGonagall asked, her eyes following the toad in the air. "Teaching a lesson," Ethan replied. "Lesson? What, Ethan, was that a student?" Professor McGonagall exclaimed, dropping her books. "No," Ethan said. Professor McGonagall breathed a sigh of relief, but Ethan's next words immediately made her tense. "It's Professor Moody," he revealed. "Oh my gosh!" Professor McGonagall exclaimed, then sternly instructed, "Ethan Green, restore Professor Moody immediately." Professor McGonagall, Moody, as a professor, used illegal corporal punishment on Malfoy, turning him into a ferret. "I merely did to Professor Moody what he did to Malfoy," Ethan explained, pointing to the ferret at his feet, which looked up at Professor McGonagall with tearful, innocent eyes. "But this does not justify a student taking action against a professor. You should have reported it to the faculty," she countered. Professor McGonagall pursed her lips, her expression serious and her tones stern. "Sorry, Professor McGonagall. I am not acting as a student punishing an unruly professor, but rather as a school administrator," Ethan said, his eyes narrowing as he smiled. "The new school director of Hogwarts, Miss Katrana Presto, has granted me full authority to act in her stead. However, now that Professor McGonagall has intervened, the punishment will end here." Ethan then picked up the ferret by the back of its neck, waved his wand, and a toad flew towards him. However, it seemed Professor McGonagall had an aversion to toads, as she instinctively dodged, causing the toad to fly directly at Ron, who was caught off guard and ended up with the toad hitting his face. Ron's face turned green when he realized he was essentially kissing the toad. In a panic, he tried to push the toad away, but accidentally sent it flying towards Professor Moody, who was recognized lying in the grass at a distance. Ron, overwhelmed, supported Harry as he began to heave violently, eventually vomiting on the ground, almost to the point of bile. The surrounding crowd made sounds of disgust and quickly dispersed. With no time to worry about Ron, McGonagall hurried off to find the toad. Meanwhile, Ethan pointed his wand at the ferret, which immediately transformed back into Draco Malfoy. Draco curled up on the stone floor, his slick blonde hair spread out over his flushed red face. After a moment, he stood up, trembling. Crabbe and Goyle rushed to his side and escorted him to the school infirmary. With the spectacle over, the young wizards who had gathered to watch also dispersed. Chapter 297. Although the farce ended with Ethan avenging Malfoy, Ethan still had follow-up troubles to solve. That afternoon, Ethan received a message from Dumbledore, inviting him to the principal's office for a chat in the evening. Dumbledore clearly had a lot on his mind. To avoid any trouble, Ethan summoned his maid. Oriana responded to the call. Clockwork Maid, awaiting her master's orders. Oriana, release your drones and help me spy on a person. Ethan instructed, using illusion magic to show Oriana Moody's appearance. Order received, Oriana acknowledged. She extended her arm, from which a compartment opened, releasing several mosquito-sized clockwork scouts. They buzzed away, becoming invisible as they dispersed in all directions, thanks to their ability to turn transparent for reconnaissance. Ethan had provided Oriana with a map of Hogwarts, enabling her to easily locate Moody. Keep watch, Ethan ordered, and inform me when Moody returns to his office. Yes, Master, Oriana confirmed. After dinner, Ethan received a message from Oriana. He immediately went to the tower to meet her. Oriana projected a holographic image from her eyes, showing the Clockwork Scout's view. In the projection, Ethan saw Moody hurrying through the castle corridors before entering his office. He locked the door with great care and took out a mysterious box that had 7 locks. Upon inserting the 7th key, the box slowly opened, revealing a hidden compartment at the bottom, about 3 meters deep. Inside the dark basement lay a man, emaciated and seemingly asleep. It was the real Mad-Eye Moody, missing his wooden legs and magical eye, with only a few strands of gray hair, looking utterly miserable. The Moody who opened the box was undoubtedly an imposter. His face transformed, scars fading and skin smoothing, his damaged nose miraculously restored, and his gray hair shortened, turning bright yellow. Suddenly, a clang sounded as a wooden leg fell to the ground, replaced by a real leg. The magical eye was ejected, replaced by a real eye that rolled on the ground, still emitting a magical glow. Barty Crouch Jr., Ethan recognized the man's true identity instantly. Although Ethan had never met Crouch Jr. personally, he was familiar with his father, Barty Crouch Sr. The resemblance between father and son was striking, yet their expressions were worlds apart. Crouch Sr. always looked serious, while Crouch Jr. exuded a stubborn and cruel demeanor. Crouch Jr. kicked away his prosthetic leg with impatience and a trace of cruelty in his eyes. He leaped into the box with agility. Hearing the noise, the real Moody opened his eyes, his face covered in black blood. He mockingly looked at Crouch Jr.'s bruised face and disheveled hair, taunting, "Have you been plucked too?" Moody's laughter and coughing filled the air, irritating Crouch Jr. He approached the curled-up Moody and kicked him hard. Moody emitted a barely audible sound. Angered, Crouch Jr. quickly drew his wand and pointed it at Moody, casting the Cruciatus Curse. The cruelty of using such a curse at the first sign of disagreement was palpable. Moody clenched his teeth, enduring the excruciating pain that felt like knives all over his body. Ethan lay there motionless, as if dead. Little Crouch's eyes gradually became crazed. "Cruciatus Curse," he cast again. Moody finally couldn't help but let out a muffled groan, his body twitching in agony. His fists were clenched, his pale nails and fingers stained with red splotches. "Ethan Green, when my master returns, I will ask him to hand you over to me," Little Crouch roared. "I'm going to pull out all your nerves and turn you into a living puppet, unable to survive or die." "Ethan Green? Did he turn you into this?" "Ha!" Moody suddenly burst out laughing hysterically. "A guy who can't even beat a player, you still want to cause trouble under Dumbledore's nose? I'm waiting for you to be executed by the Dementors." Little Crouch, poked at a sore spot, retorted, "What about you? Weren't you also turned into a toad by another, our player? The two of them seemed to be partners on the court." He was deeply ashamed of being turned into a toad. Not only did he hate Ethan, the direct culprit, but he also despised Moody, who had implicated him. After that, Crouch gave Moody another slap, pulled out a bunch of hair from his body, then ignored Moody, who was trembling with pain, jumped out of the box and returned to the office. He picked up a wine bottle and took a big gulp. Gradually, his face began to change, turning into Moody's. Ethan got the answer he wanted and asked Oriana to end the projection. After returning to Hogwarts, he walked directly to the principal's office and said the password Dumbledore left for him, Tweety's Cauldron Cake. As soon as he finished speaking, the stone beast moved away from the door of the principal's office, revealing an automatically rotating escalator. Ethan saw this and walked up the stairs. Ethan's hand gently grasped the Griffon brass door knocker, and with a slight twist, the oak door opened. Inside, exquisite silverware was placed on the slender-legged table, seemingly given life, spinning quietly and emitting a faint smoke. The portraits of the male and female principals were snoring in their frames, their heads lazily leaning back on armchairs or against the portraits, as if they were sleeping. Phineas Black's voice broke the quiet atmosphere. He was uncharacteristically serious and said, "Oh, it's Mr. Green. Welcome to the principal's office. I want to thank you for rehabilitating my useless great-great-grandson, leaving hope for our Black family." After hearing this, Ethan smiled slightly. "You're welcome. Sirius has given me enough reward." He responded politely, maintaining respect even for a portrait. Suddenly, bright green flames burst out from the empty fireplace, and Dumbledore's tall figure emerged from the fire. He looked at Ethan with a smile on his face. "Good evening, Mr. Green. Maybe before we chat, you would like some Tweety's Cauldron Cake?" After that, he calmly stepped out of the fireplace and invited Ethan to sit down opposite him at the long table. Watching the food flying to the table, Ethan had no appetite. Dumbledore was preparing the food while observing Ethan. However, the boy seemed not to notice the other person's gaze, and calmly used a little arcane trick to conjure a few ice cubes for his pumpkin juice. Dumbledore sighed deeply, knowing that Ethan had powerful allies in the Ministry of Magic. Nymphadora Tonks, a young witch he was very optimistic about, is talented, driven, kind-hearted, and has a good reputation. One of her parents is a Muggle, and the other is a pureblood wizard who is a traitor to the family and Muggles. Dumbledore had long been eyeing her and planned to recruit her into the Order of the Phoenix. Unexpectedly, Ethan had won her over in the first year of school. He could only watch as Tonks and Ethan's family grew closer, making it impossible for her to join the Order of the Phoenix. Proudmoore is an exceptionally rare and powerful witch, standing among the top leaders of the Ministry of Magic. Even she possesses qualities that are beyond her own understanding. Known for her kindness and wisdom, she is also exceedingly cautious and tends to avoid forming close alliances. The Order of the Phoenix once attempted to recruit her, but after their initial meeting, they decided not to pursue her further. This was the status quo until, surprisingly, she underwent a radical change over the past 2 years. Originally maintaining a neutral stance, she began to aggressively expand her influence within the Ministry of Magic, a shift that baffled many, including herself. Prior to this change, she had met Ethan Green, and they quickly formed a close bond. Miss Ketlana Presto, a descendant of a noble South American family, moved to the Yin Kingdom following a dragon-slaying incident. A formidable witch in her own right, she excels in dragon training and possesses exceptional communication skills. Upon her arrival, she quickly ascended to the upper ranks of the Yin Kin, Jidom's Wizarding Society, seamlessly integrating herself. While it was unexpected for Katrana to acquire shares in Hogwarts, it seemed logical given her capabilities. However, her decision to fully entrust those shares to Ethan Green was something Dumbledore had not anticipated. He wondered how their relationship had grown so close so quickly. Dumbledore left to verify this surprising development, only to find it was indeed true. He was perplexed by how a young wizard of Muggle origin like Ethan could establish such a vast network of connections, gain significant reputation within the school, and found a highly sought-after scholarly society. Moreover, Ethan's list of remarkable achievements left Dumbledore feeling completely disconnected from him. After much contemplation, Dumbledore addressed the matter directly. "Mr. Green, I am pleased that Miss Presto has entrusted you with the authority of school director. I trust you will exercise this power wisely." "Of course," Ethan responded. "I am a student of Hogwarts myself, and naturally, I want nothing but the best for our school." Dumbledore smiled and nodded in agreement. "I trust you. However, I must remind you that school directors do not have the authority to punish professors." Ethan set down his pumpkin juice and replied, "I understand that, but just as directors cannot punish professors, professors should not have the right to corporally punish students." He then gently sniffed his pumpkin juice before taking another sip. At that moment, the tension in the room was palpable, while the illustrations of Fleur and Oriana quietly resumed their work. Chapter 298. It was already late, and Ethan had no intention of prolonging the conversation with Dumbledore. He spoke bluntly. "In fact, I discovered that the Moody you invited is not an ordinary professor, and I was about to inform you of this." Ethan drew his wand, pointed it at Dumbledore's desk, and with a flick of his finger, the image from Moody's office appeared on the desk, replicating the scene Oriana had previously shown. "You actually spy on the professors at Hogwarts," Dumbledore observed, realizing something from the image, but immediately refrained from further accusation. He saw the scene where Moody transformed back into Crouch Jr. "Moody is actually fake," Dumbledore exclaimed, visibly surprised after witnessing the entire process. He hadn't anticipated this at all. He infiltrated the school like a hungry lion sneaking into a flock of sheep. Given his status as a Death Eater, it was clear who his target was: Harry Potter. Ethan's gaze was sharp, closely observing Dumbledore, who had completely forgotten the cake he had prepared, now engrossed in the situation. "Do you recognize that curse? The 637 magic spell that uses the blood of the enemy for resurrection?" Ethan's voice carried a chilling undertone. Dumbledore nodded, recalling the resurrection magic known as bone, flesh, blood, which required the bones of the father, the flesh of the servant, and the blood of the enemy to resurrect the target. This spell was documented in Heart of Darkness, The Origin and Evolution of Black Magic. Due to its dangerous content, Dumbledore had moved it from the restricted section to his office. Later, as part of a deal with Ethan, the books were mostly returned to the restricted area. It was normal for Ethan to be aware of this magic. Dumbledore clasped his hands and rested his chin on them. "He must be planning to use the Triwizard Tournament to get Harry out of your protective circle, Ethan. His goal must be to have Harry compete. All it takes is a powerful confusion spell or a helper, and he might succeed," Dumbledore mused, his tone laden with concern. "As for Barty Crouch Jr., I feel now is not the time to reveal his true identity," Dumbledore continued, his expression serene, almost indifferent. Ethan looked directly into Dumbledore's eyes, leaned forward slightly, and said, "Catching little Crouch now will only alert the enemy and do us no good. On the contrary, it will expose us to more dangers. At least now we know who is behind this, and his every move is under our surveillance. Otherwise, among so many teachers and students, identifying a pretender would be like finding a needle in a haystack, and by then, the danger Harry faces would be even more severe." Dumbledore's voice was calm, yet filled with resolve. As for Moody, as long as Crouch Jr. is not exposed, he will be safe until their final plan is executed. He didn't elaborate, but both he and Ethan understood well. Making Polyjuice Potion requires materials from Moody's body, and Crouch Jr. needs Moody alive to ensure the potion's efficacy and stability. This situation resembled a complex chess game centered around Harry's safety, with everyone seeking the best strategy. Ethan had no qualms about this. After learning about the conflict between Hilary and Moody, he had no favorable impression of the latter. Now that Dumbledore, one of his own, had abandoned him, Ethan, an outsider, naturally let it go. Through this incident, Ethan once again perceived another facet of Dumbledore beneath his gentle exterior. A man who is proud, arrogant, and willing to sacrifice everything for his goals, including himself. Only such a person would raise a child in a harsh environment for the sake of a prophecy, and then personally guide him through various trials towards a fateful end. This revelation shed light on another aspect of Dumbledore's character. Reasons for the conflicts between Ethan and Dumbledore existed, but they were still able to find common ground for cooperation. "I understand your reasons for sharing this with me," You also aim to fulfill Lady Proudmoore's objectives, which I clearly recognize. Once this is resolved, I will personally deliver Barty Crouch Jr. into your custody and vouch for your integrity, Dumbledore said, with a slight smile, as he adjusted his glasses and stated his terms. Ethan nodded slightly in agreement. You're correct. Let's set aside the matter of the imposter Moody for now. The danger Harry faces is within our control. For me, capturing the fake Moody is the key. Once he's caught, Crouch's downfall is inevitable, and there's no need to rush, he said confidently, as if he had already foreseen the downfall of the elder Crouch. Thus, a clandestine agreement was reached. Dumbledore was aware that in the current political struggle within the Ministry of Magic, the Fudge faction and Jaina's faction were jointly undermining Crouch Sr. It was well known that Crouch Jr. was a Death Eater, having been freed by his mother's sacrifice in his stead. This required Crouch Sr. to keep him under house arrest. Now, with Crouch Jr. having escaped to impersonate the former Auroralaster Moody and infiltrate Hogwarts, the revelation of this act would severely tarnish Crouch Sr.'s reputation, leading to his almost certain downfall. Dumbledore sought Ethan's cooperation to delay exposing Crouch Jr., which meant that the forces behind Ethan would have to tolerate Crouch Sr. for another year. In return, Dumbledore promised to personally vouch for Ethan's credibility after the matter was resolved, ensuring they could effectively counteract Crouch Sr.'s influence. After reaching our agreement, Dumbledore said, his mood visibly brightening, there's another matter. It concerns the Triwizard Tournament. The rule barring minors from participating was actually proposed by Madame Maxime of Beauxbatons and Karkaroff of Durmstrang to prevent your participation. Dumbledore looked at Ethan with admiration. They agreed that your strength would disrupt the balance of the competition. Then I won't participate, Ethan responded indifferently. But I expect some form of compensation. Muggles have a concept of non-compete agreements for employees who resign. Dumbledore, unfamiliar with the concept of a non-compete agreement, nonetheless grasped Ethan's implication. So what do you desire, Mr. Green? I believe both Madame Maxime and Mr. Karkaroff would be interested in your perspective. Ethan nodded and stated his conditions. Since I'm not allowed to compete, I should at least be allowed to organize. I believe I can bring a fresh perspective to the Triwizard Tournament. If that's your wish, I'll persuade them, Dumbledore agreed, seeing the reasonableness in Ethan's request. It would be unfair for someone to relinquish such an honor without justification. Those aware of Ethan's strength would understand his exclusion, while others might mistakenly believe his abilities were overrated. Granting Ethan a role as one of the organizers would validate his status. Dumbledore also had his personal motives. But Ethan, I must ask you to look after Harry during the tournament and ensure he remains safe, he said calmly, locking eyes with Ethan. Of course, Harry is my friend as well, Ethan agreed, but that doesn't include protecting him from Voldemort in the final confrontation. Then it's settled, Dumbledore said, raising his glass in celebration. It was late when Ethan returned to the lounge, but he didn't rush to prepare for bed. Instead, he shared, Gil discussed the situation regarding the imposter Moody and his conversation with Dumbledore. The next day, after waking up, Ethan received a reply from Jaina through Homer. Jaina had agreed to collaborate with Dumbledore and decided to delay the plan to apprehend Crouch Jr. For them, merely capturing Crouch Jr. was not sufficient. During the allotted time, Jaina intended to gather evidence against the members of the Crouch sect and make adequate preparations. This strategy aimed to ensure that when the time was right, they could not only capture Crouch Jr., but also dismantle his thefts, Ather's influence effectively. Consequently, all the officials aligned with his faction would be apprehended. Regarding the Triwizard Tournament, Jaina also expressed her support. She had already reached out to Ludo Bagman, who would assist Ethan throughout the event. Despite the initial financial gains Bagman experienced with the rise of the Yin Kingdom team, his fortunes plummeted during the finals. Anna and Lucius had placed a bet of 2,000 galleons, leading to Bagman accruing a debt of nearly 10,000 galleons. The saying goes, if the pig-killing plate falls on your head, it's yours to deal with. However, Jaina had no intention of exploiting Bagman for his money from the outset. Her primary goal was to gain leverage over him, and Lucius had compliantly transferred the debt to Jaina. To evade repaying his debt, Ludo Bagman had fully aligned himself with Jaina's faction at this point. With his assistance, Ethan was poised to make the Triwizard Tournament both innovative and thrilling. Chapter 299. After entering the 4th grade, the students found that, aside from the less favored herbology and magical creatures classes, other subjects also presented their own peculiarities. Professor Snape's recent behavior had caught everyone's attention. It was well known that Snape harbored a strong desire to teach defense against the dark arts, yet for 4 consecutive years, he had been passed over for the position. His dissatisfaction with the previous defense against the dark arts teachers was hardly a secret, as he rarely hid his contempt. However, his attitude towards Mad-Eye Moody was markedly different. Snape seemed to go out of his way to avoid Moody's gaze, whether it was his magical eye or his normal one, during meals or when they crossed paths in the corridors. This behavior led many to speculate that Snape was intimidated by Moody. Despite this, opinions on Moody's fearsomeness were divided. Some dismissed him as unthreatening, especially after he was dismissed from the Auror ranks by his junior, Cyrilla, and was publicly humiliated by Ethan at Hogwarts. Yet, when Moody entered the classroom for Ravenclaw's first lesson with him, the atmosphere shifted immediately. Any lingering whispers ceased as students caught sight of his imposing figure and the wooden prosthetic leg visible beneath his robes. "Put away all those textbooks. They won't be of any use today," Moody announced in a gruff, hoarse voice as he made his way to the podium, leaning heavily on his crutches. The reason for his distinctive tone was a massive scar on his neck, a grim reminder of an encounter that had nearly cost him his vocal cords. The classroom erupted into laughter, but it quickly subsided as students eagerly anticipated the lesson. Moody's reputation for delivering unique and engaging content was well known, a precedent set by Lupin the previous year. Moody, unfazed by the students' reactions, began to call roll. His normal eye scanned the list, while his magical eye roamed the room, scrutinizing each student. When Ethan's name was called, Moody's magical eye narrowed, a clear sign of recognition and perhaps animosity. "All right," Moody said after completing roll call, "I've been briefed by Professor Lupin on your current understanding of how to confront dark creatures. You've covered boggarts, redcaps, hinkypunks, grendulos, kappas, and werewolves, correct?" The students murmured their assent. "However, when it comes to countering spells, your knowledge is lacking, severely lacking," Moody continued, his smile taking on a sinister edge. "This year, I intend to introduce you to the magic that wizards use against each other. You have 1 year to learn how to defend against dark magic." Spells vary greatly in form and power. According to Ministry of Magic guidelines, I'm supposed to teach you counterspells, and that's all. Technically, since you're not in your 6th year, I shouldn't even be discussing illegal dark spells with you. You're still too young to handle such matters." He paused, his smile growing even more menacing. "But Professor Dumbledore has spoken highly of your bravery. He believes you're capable of facing these challenges, and I agree. The sooner you understand what you're up against, the better. How can you protect yourself against something you've never seen? If a wizard intends to cast an illegal spell on you, he won't announce his intentions. He won't recite the spell in a fair, polite manner. You must always be prepared and vigilant." The classroom was enveloped in silence when Moody posed the question. "So, does any of you know what a dark wizard is?" His gaze swept across the room, and before anyone could volunteer an answer, he called out a name with a sudden increase in volume. "Ethan Green." His voice almost roared as he continued, "I've heard that you're recognized as a genius here at Hogwarts. Now please stand up and answer the question." Ethan, unfazed by Moody's intimidating demeanor, stood and calmly replied, "According to the book, it generally refers to evil wizards who study and use black magic. However, I believe that if a wizard uses any spell, like the fire spell, for malevolent purposes, they too can be considered a dark wizard." "Good answer, but I didn't ask for your opinion," Moody retorted sharply. Before Ethan could sit, Moody barked at him again. "I haven't told you to sit down yet, Ethan Green. Stay standing." Ethan straightened immediately, his knees locking back into place. He suspected that Moody, or rather, Barty Crouch Jr., using Polyjuice Potion to impersonate Moody, was exploiting his authority as a professor to exact revenge for a previous incident where Ethan had turned him into a toad. Ethan realized that to maintain his status as a good student at Hogwarts, he would have to endure this unfair treatment. Moody, with a grin still plastered on his face, took his time before asking the next question. Now, Ethan Green, which spells in black magic are deemed the most evil and carry the severest penalties under wizarding law. The 3 unforgivable curses, the Imperious Curse, the Cruciatus Curse, and the Killing Curse, Ethan answered, his tone steady and unaffected by the pressure. Ah, well said. Moody expressed his admiration. These curses have indeed caused the Ministry of Magic a great deal of trouble. He then temporarily ceased his interrogation of Ethan. Then he opened a drawer in the podium and retrieved a glass bottle containing 3 large black spiders. Moody selected one spider, holding it in his open palm for all to see, then pointed his wand at it and whispered, "Imperio!" The classroom buzzed with excitement as the students recognized the spell. The spider leaped from Moody's hand, suspended by a thin thread, swinging back and forth as if on a high swing. It then stiffened its legs, flipped over, and after the thread snapped, it crashed onto the table, tumbling in circles. With another flick of his wand, Moody made the spider stand on its hind legs and perform a tap dance, eliciting laughter from everyone except Moody himself. "You think it's funny, do you?" he asked in a gruff voice. "Would you find it amusing if I did this to you?" The laughter ceased instantly. "It's completely under my control," Moody stated softly, as the spider curled up and began to roll around. "I could make it jump out of the window, drown itself, or even leap into the throat of one of your classmates." He then explained how, years ago, many wizards were controlled by the Imperious Curse, which posed a significant challenge for the Ministry of Magic, as they had to differentiate between those acting under duress and those acting of their own volition. Suddenly raising his voice, Moody startled everyone. "The Imperious Curse can be resisted, and I will teach you how, but it requires a strong will, and not everyone can master it. You're better off trying to avoid it. Stay vigilant at all times." Next, Moody announced his intention to demonstrate the Cruciatus Curse. "You'll need to see this up close," he said, enlarging the spider with a spell until it was bigger than a tarantula. Raising his wand once more, he pointed at the spider and whispered, "Crucio!" Instantly, the spider's legs retracted and pressed against its body. It flipped over, its body convulsing violently, shaking from side to side. The distressing scene made it clear to all who witnessed it the true nature of the curse. The creature inside the bottle was clearly in immense pain, as evidenced by its frantic attempts to bash its head against the bottle's walls, seemingly trying to end its own life. This distressing sight caused a palpable shift in the classroom atmosphere. The young wizards, previously underestimating Moody, now looked upon him with horror and fear, none daring to meet his gaze directly. The thought of enduring such torment at the hands of this unpredictable man was unthinkable. "Excruciating pain," Moody stated calmly, capturing the attention of every student. "With the Cruciatus Curse, there's no need for physical tools like thumb clamps or knives to inflict torture. This spell enjoyed a period of popularity for that very reason." At this point, some of the more sensitive students, unable to bear the grim topic, began to sob quietly. Moody seemed to derive a grim satisfaction from the students' reactions. The spider, having expended its last reserves of energy, now lay motionless at the bottom of the bottle, a silent testament to the curse's lethal efficiency. "Now, we come to the final and most deadly spell," Moody announced, his voice grave. "The Avada Kedavra, the Killing Curse." Apologies for the late update today. I was setting up my computer. Expect more updates tomorrow. Chapter 300. Following Moody's voice, several young wizards' eyes widened in shock, and they stood up nervously, as if they wanted to intervene. "Avada Kedavra!" Moody shouted. A dazzling green light pierced through the air, accompanied by a chaotic sound reminiscent of an invisible giant soaring through the sky. Simultaneously, the spider flipped over, landing on its back on the table, lifeless. It bore no marks, yet it was undeniably dead. Everyone, including the girls who had been crying, ceased their tears and stared blankly at the spider's corpse, their expressions numb. "It's not pretty," Moody stated calmly. It's unpleasant, and there's no counter-curse. No defense exists against it. As far as anyone knows, only one person has ever survived this spell, and you all know who he is. It was clear to everyone that he was referring to Harry Potter. Avada Kedavra requires immense magical power as its foundation. You could all point your wands at me, chant this spell, and I probably wouldn't even get a nosebleed. But that's irrelevant. I'm not here to teach you how to use it. So why am I showing you this if there's no antidote? Because you need to understand something. You must be fully aware of the worst. You don't want to find yourself unprepared in the face of danger. Stay alert at all times, he shouted, startling the class once more. Then, he called out Ethan Green's name for the third time. Ethan Green, stand in front of me. I need your cooperation to demonstrate the true nature of the soul-stealing curse. I will teach you how to defend against these dangerous spells in actual combat. Hearing this, the students couldn't help but murmur among themselves. This seemed like a clear target. When Ethan heard his name, he smiled and said, "The Imperious Curse, the Cruciatus Curse, and the Killing Curse are known as the three unforgivable curses because using any one of them on a human being is enough to land the caster in Azkaban for life." He glanced at Professor Moody and asked jokingly, "Professor Moody, do you fancy a stint in Azkaban? The inmates there are surely eager to reunite with you, given that many of them were apprehended by you." "I? Imprisoned in Azkaban? What a joke! I'm merely here to do my job and teach you how to resist the unforgivable curses." Professor Moody's voice boomed with confidence, as if he truly believed in his innocence. He then continued, somewhat impatiently, all right, enough dawdling, Ethan. Come up and demonstrate." Ethan's smile widened, but his eyes were as cold as the deepest winter, radiating a chilling aura. He had already deciphered Moody's intentions. It was merely an excuse to teach, while waiting for an opportunity to strike. Being hit by his Imperious Curse even once meant being controlled indefinitely, as one could never be certain of being truly free from its influence. "Ethan, don't go!" Steve, who was sitting next to Ethan, clutched at his robe, his voice laden with anxiety. However, Ethan proceeded to walk up to Professor Moody, his gaze filled with scorn. Professor Moody licked his lips cruelly and praised, "Your bravery is commendable." He then took out his magic wand and whispered, "The soul departs the body." As Professor Moody's wand swayed gently, a nearly invisible magical force emerged from its tip, striking Ethan. As a scion, Ethan could distinctly feel a psychic force attempting to dominate his mind. Unfortunately for Moody, he had underestimated Ethan's strength and overestimated his own. Counterspell! Ethan launched the counterspell in the most direct and forceful manner. The young wizards observed as Ethan, seemingly unaffected on the stage, remained stoic, while Moody, in his attempt to control Ethan, staggered backward, suddenly bleeding from every orifice, presenting a terrifying sight. What have you done?" "What did you do?" Moody asked in a hoarse voice. He had just attempted to control Ethan, but when the spell penetrated Ethan's consciousness, he felt as if a battering ram had struck his brain, plunging his vision into darkness. "Like you said, I was demonstrating how to resist an unforgivable curse," Ethan replied, his voice low and taunting. "It seems making your nose bleed isn't as difficult as you thought." With that, he descended from the podium as if the incident was trivial. The event had terrified the young wizards. They watched as Professor Moody, his face smeared with blood, struggled to stand. He remained unsteady on the podium for a long time until the bell finally rang, breaking the eerie silence. The students hurried out of the classroom, relieved to escape the dangerous atmosphere. After Ethan's public humiliation of Moody, who was, in fact, Barty Crouch Jr. in disguise, the imposter professor no longer dared to provoke Ethan. Even in the castle corridors, he avoided Ethan as one might avoid a dangerous predator. In the weeks following the start of the school year, good news arrived from Beauxbatons and Durmstrang. The principals of both schools had agreed to invite Ethan to join the Triwizard Tournament's organizing committee. They believed that preventing Ethan from participating as a competitor would be a victory in itself. The thought of their students competing against someone capable of single-handedly defeating a chimera, a basilisk, and the largest fire dragon in magical history was daunting. By the way, after a year of debate, the Yin Kingdom had officially recognized Onyxia as the largest fire dragon in magical history, a posthumous honor for the Black Dragon Princess. With Ethan's inclusion in the organizing committee, he frequently left Hogwarts to attend preparatory meetings for the Triwizard Tournament. There, he collaborated with Ludo Bagman to completely revamp the tournament. The three school principals had little choice but to acquiesce, as long as Ethan did not participate as a competitor. Meanwhile, on campus, there was more good news. Homer had finally ended his vow of silence, no longer needing to communicate through Ginny. The members of the Genius Club held a small celebration in the tower to mark the occasion. Ethan, busy with the Triwizard Tournament's reforms, attended the celebration that afternoon. That evening, after his potions class, he didn't go to the dining hall but returned directly to the tower using the mansion spell. He found the girls celebrating Hermione's return to speech. Jiang Chu and Hermione were responsible for cooking, while Gwen and Oriana assisted. The three younger girls, Luna, Ginny, and Astoria, watched idly. Ginny and Hermione had grown much closer after more than a month of Ginny acting as Hermione's voice. Astoria, another practitioner of silent meditation alongside Hermione, had also ended her practice. She had been invited to the celebration due to her previous involvement in the Erudite Society. Ethan planned to assist her in obtaining the magical animagus transformation, indicating his intention to involve her further, which is why she was included in the celebration. Hermione, Cho Chang, and Luna were accustomed to the convenience of returning to the tower at any time within Hogwarts, but Ginny and Astoria were amazed by this capability and eagerly questioned Luna about it. When Ethan appeared, they immediately cast longing eyes on him, eager to obtain this privilege. To gain this right, you have to pass a test, Ethan replied. You need to make more contributions to the Polytechnic Society, but at the same time, you cannot fall behind in your studies. If this is possible, I will consider granting you the same permissions before the start of next semester at the latest. Remember to keep it confidential from others, Luna also added.